Are we online? Is that yes?
Yes.
Okay, we're online. We're calling the meeting to order. If you'll stand, and we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. Lindsay, would you do that too, please?
Sure. Let's begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And please remain standing.
Please bow your heads with me. Dear Lord, we come to you today and we ask first and foremost for wisdom to guide us through the decisions that we have before us today. We pray that you would be with all of the people in our city, in our state, in our country, and all across the world who are suffering through this pandemic, Lord. We pray that you would help people with their finances, their health, and their mental health as well, Lord. And we just pray that this would all come to an end soon and that we would all be able to come together. And we thank you for your son's sacrifice on the cross for our sins, Lord. And we pray all these things in your son's name. Amen.
Amen. Please be seated. Okay, the next item is the city attorney's report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Lloyd Pilchin. City Council met in closed session on 3 items set forth in the agenda. Direction was given. No reportable final action was taken by Council. Thank you.
Okay, the next one will be presentations. And, sir?
Good evening. So I have good news that Kern County Public Health, I spoke on this several months ago, put in for the tobacco grant, and they were successful in getting that grant and have passed down some of it to us. So I'll share that with you.
I don't know if you want to
Let
open
me.
that.
Wait.
I'll get it. Can we get it?
Yeah, Chief.
Who's banging on the
Why? Do you know who it is?
Well, I just knew, I have seen things that people were going to be showing up, so I don't know if somehow somebody got.
Showing up there?
Oh. How would they get back there?
There's a gate right there.
I know, but you have to have a code.
The walk gate? I don't think
Yeah,
there's a code
it
to
is.
walk.
It is locked.
Oh, this is on the outside of the gate.
Okay.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
Oh, this is on
Well,
It is on the outside of the
I
gate.
was going to say I'm going to have the chief go on with this. Okay. The chief is not here. Okay, Chief, go ahead, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
I don't know. Somebody's knocking on the window out there now.
That's what,
Let him knock.
I can't see who it is.
We can't do anything.
Yeah. It's somebody
Okay,
carrying
Chief.
in, but I don't know. Oh, it's somebody
Forgot to
carrying an
turn
American
this
Carrying
flag
an American flag.
and a green
Oh,
shirt.
let it go.
Okay, so a little bit our demographics. This is what they reported to DOJ when they applied for the grant. So our population, 28,940. Youth between the ages of 5 to 17, 5,424. Our youth under 5 years of age, 2,042. We have 28 tobacco retailers within the city, 17 which are located near youth-sensitive areas, and 7 of those retailers are located within 1,000 feet of a school. And then 63% of Ridgecrest senior students have reported that they have used an e-cigarette at some point in time.
That's surprising.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
An overview of the grant. It's a California DOJ grant. It was obtained by Kern Public Health, and we're partnering with them. They've provided the funding to fund 1 SRO position. The original request was for 2, but it got cut to 1. Our award, I don't know why it's was in the amount of $286,092. over a 3-year span. However, this grant started in October of 2019, but there was something with DOJ and the county to get some things done. We just received it, so we'll start this month. And in the grant, there's listed 5 program goals. And this is just a chart of the breakdown. So each year we'll receive $90,823 for personnel, and then administrative costs of $4,541 for a total of $286,092.
Sir, did we lose any of that money because we started late? Or it was started late?
My understanding is we'll still be able to use it for purchasing information, educational materials, and things like that. And then the officer that's selected will be start being paid under that grant here shortly.
Thank you.
Are we adding an additional school resource officer?
Yeah. Oh,
than
yes.
what we
So
have?
there will be a total of 3.
Okay.
One of them under this grant. This will not take all of their time, obviously, so they'll do a lot of other things as well. But they do have a lot of tasks in this, though, as well. So I'll go through those real quick for you. So the first goal listed is the officers will conduct educational outreach to schools to increase knowledge about tobacco use and health risks. They'll do presentation at the middle school and high schools for students, staff, parents, anybody that will attend. I don't know why my thing is doing that. One of the stats that they listed in there, Kern County youth tobacco use is at 15.4%, when the state average is at 13.8%, so we are quite a bit higher. And then one way to monitor this goal, surveys will be administered before and following the presentation to measure the success of the outreach.
Do they answer the questions anonymously?
That I'm not sure. I haven't seen those documents
Okay.
yet.
From what I've seen, they normally pass out health surveys at the schools, and it would probably just be a question on that health survey.
Goal number 2, the selected SRO will be responsible for training, tobacco-related enforcement, and outreach. This is where the retailers will come into play. Increase in knowledge of retailers and community members about tobacco-related health risks, and then they'll train resources to train the school system as well as local retailers on policies in place to protect our youth from tobacco products and their harmful effects. So they'll give both presentations to the retailers as well as within the school district. Don't know how that's going to affect the private schools, such as St. Anne's and Emmanuel, but I would say that this would cover them as well. So, and then one of the matrix, success will be measured through the attendance at the scheduled trainings and meetings, which will be conducted throughout the city. Evaluations will be tracked, and feedback will be incorporated into future presentations and trainings to ensure materials are appropriate for the audiences. Goal number 3, this is the enforcement-related activities. So annually, they'll do at least contact 25 retailers and conduct an operation to identify non-compliant. And the goal is to obviously reduce the number of non-compliant tobacco retailers. and conduct annually at a minimum of on 15 the follow-up of the non-compliant. They want at least 15 follow-ups done on those non-compliant retailers.
Are they done on a rotating basis, or?
Yeah, it would be, and that's further on in here, kind of defines it more.
You.
They want it done within a certain time frame. And then they obviously will partner. Kern Health will actually come over and be with us when we do a lot of this enforcement, looking for non-compliance. The operations will help gather data regarding the tobacco sales to underage youth, and so that retailers are held accountable for these violations. And an increase in enforcement of the laws during these operations will hopefully reduce future sales to our youth in the community. Goal number 4, more retailer education. They want education meetings, 60 to 90 minutes in duration, conducted annually for all of the retailers that sell tobacco. You know, the goal is to reduce tobacco sales to the youth. Trainings will be conducted annually and also after each operation, and it'll be mandatory training for those non-compliant retailers to educate their clerks about laws, not only state, local, but also federal.
Are there any fines given out to realtors that are violating that law?
Yeah, they'll be cited.
Who made your fancy PowerPoint? With all the
Me, but I don't know why it's doing that though. So, goal number 5: conduct post enforcement. This is the non-compliant that had been caught already. So, post enforcement operations, they want those conducted within 4 to 5 months after the initial violation. And these operations will provide a proactive enforcement approach, obviously, to make sure that they are in compliance now with all of the laws. And that's it. Any questions?
Yeah, I've got a quick question, Chief. The requirements for training on these retailers, what's the vehicle that they're required? Is that through the county? Is that through?
It will be the school resource officer will schedule those meetings, and they will have the training to provide the retailers the training, which public health will probably be there as well, especially during the beginning of it, to provide any other feedback to the retailers in case they need it.
I just assumed that they already had some sort of, like, I'm not trying to fight this at all.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to understand the process, that if they already have requirements from the federal government, from the state government, from the locals, that I didn't know if this was additional to the requirements they already have to adhere to.
No, this is just reminding them of the laws and what they can and can't do, and just reminders. Clerks, they'll come and go, so making sure that the new ones know what they're allowed to do and what the laws are.
No, I think it's great. Thanks, Chief.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item we have is the presentation of proclamation for Public Works Week, and Councilman Maurer, you have that.
Do I need to go down and present this, or can I?
You can do it from here, I think.
Okay. A proclamation of the City of Ridgecrest, California, National Public Works Week. Whereas governmental employees, consultants, and contractors provide public works services to our community that are a vital and integral part of our citizens' everyday lives, and whereas the support of the community is vital to the efficient operation of the public works systems and programs such as water, streets, fleet maintenance, transit, building maintenance, wastewater treatment, and solid waste collection, and whereas the health, safety, and comfort of this community greatly depends on these infrastructure facilities and services, and whereas the quality and effectiveness of these facilities as well as their planning, design, and construction is vitally dependent upon the efforts and skill of public works professionals, And whereas the efficiency and effectiveness of these qualified and skilled professionals contribute to the quality of life that residents and visitors alike enjoy and rely upon, now therefore be it proclaimed by the Mayor and City Council that we recognize and extend appreciation to our dedicated and skilled staff, consultants, and contractors, and hereby proclaim the week of May 17th through the 23rd, 2020 as National Public Works Week. And be it further proclaimed that the Mayor and City Council request that all citizens and civic organizations acquaint themselves with the issues involved in providing public works services to our community and to recognize the contributions which all public works employees make every day to our health, safety, comfort, and quality of life. Proclaimed this 6th day of May, 2020 by the Mayor and the City Council.
Thank you, Mayor and members of council. I'm Bard Lauer. I'm the Public Works Director for the city. One of the things to remember is that Public Works isn't just the organization that works for the city. In this town, at least, we have separate waste haulers, we have the water district, and all of our consultants that help us put our programs together. One of the things to remember is that, very rarely do they get looked at as essential personnel or first responders. But I would state that the people in the city see them hopefully more often than they see a police officer or a fireman, because those only happen when something bad's happened. The guys are out there patching potholes and have during the entire COVID-19. They're out there slurrying right now. The engineering group has made sure that 3 large projects have just gotten put out to bid, and they're about to get started on them. Everybody's still flushing their toilets and turning on their water, and water's coming out. And lastly, the transit group has gone, even though they've gone to dial-a-ride instead of the fixed routes, they've been getting people where they need to go that don't have any other way to get there. Public Works is an essential part of any community. And this is a good time to tell them thank you if you run into them.
Thank you for your service, sir, and please extend that from all of us to your department. Thank you. Okay, the next one, we have one more proclamation, and that is for the police department, and Councilman Heyman has that.
Okay, so we have here a proclamation of the City of Ridgecrest, California, honoring National Police Week, May 10th to the 16th of 2020. Whereas the members of the Ridgecrest Police Department play an essential role in safeguarding the rights and freedoms of the City of Ridgecrest, and whereas it is important that all citizens know and understand the duties, responsibilities, hazards, and sacrifices of their law enforcement agency, and that members of our law enforcement agency recognize their duty to serve the people and the community by safeguarding life and property, by protecting them against violence and disorder, and by protecting the innocent against deception and the weak against oppression. And whereas the men and women of the Ridgecrest Police Department unceasingly provide a vital public service. Now, therefore, Peggy Breeden, Mayor of the City of Ridgecrest, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim May 10th through May 16th, 2020 as Police Week in the City of Ridgecrest in honor of the law enforcement officers past and present who have rendered a dedicated service to the community, and do further proclaim May 15th, 2020 as Peace Officer Memorial Day in honor of those law enforcement officers who, through their courageous deeds, have made the ultimate sacrifice in service to their community or have become disabled in the performance of duty. Proclaimed this 6th day, May 2020, by our Mayor and City Council.
Thank you. Chief?
Well, thank you, Council. Unfortunately, we can't have everybody here tonight, like Public Works and members from the PD. So, I hope they're watching and know that everybody is thankful of everything that those groups have done. Been a rough year, so not only 2020 but 1920. So. I think all city staff has done an amazing job and stepping up. So, I couldn't be prouder of everyone, but especially the men and women of my department. So, but I think the city as a whole has been great. So, thank you.
Thank you. extend our thanks to all the department. Thank you. All right, the next item is public comment. Persons wishing to address the council on matters that are within the council's jurisdiction and do not already appear in the agenda may do so at this time. Pursuant to the Brown Act, the City Council may not take action on an item that does not appear on the agenda. Speakers are limited to 5 minutes. The public comment section of the agenda is limited to a total of 1 hour. Each speaker is asked to provide his or her name. Is there any speakers who wish to address the council? Are there any speakers on the line? Go ahead, speaker.
Hello?
Hello, please go ahead and identify yourself and speak as you wish.
This is Dave Matthews. My address is on file. First of all, the sound system and the video are not working very well here tonight. I keep telling you guys there's problems with the sound system down there. But anyway, I had a question for the chief, and I hope you're not taking it from on his report, because I tried to call in when he was giving that, and I didn't get through. But in light of the fact that the the resource officers do not have schools to go to or businesses to visit, are we going to lose any of that funding, or can we run it over?
Chief?
The funding from the grant that I presented on earlier, Mr. Matthews?
Yes.
That grant is in place, so we won't lose any of it. So the money that, for whatever the time frame from October until now, there was something with DOJ and the county while the money didn't get released to the county until now. We can't extend the grant, but we can utilize that money to purchase educational materials, flyers, all that kind, whatever things that that officer can use in educating and with the public and the schools. So I guess the answer to your question is no.
Okay, thank you. All right, now, in the public comment, and I'm not going to have time to get it all in that you're going to allow me, but first of all, I would like to mention that whoever speaks, please identify yourself, because the camera does not always get there while you're talking. So, having said that, you're going to probably hear from Mike Sinat. You may have remembered him. And what he has to say this evening, I am in total agreement with. So I just wanted to state that up front. Now, if there's any members of the armed forces from World War II, even maybe some World War I, Korea, any of the armed forces people that are still living, I bet you they are about ready to throw up. And the ones that are dead, they're probably rolling over in their graves. Because I realized last Sunday night that this country, in fact the whole world, has been the victim of mass hysteria. Now, why do I say that? Because look what's happened. We've got the whole darn country shut down, the whole world in some cases, except for a few exceptions. And back when I was still not even in school yet, there was a president by the name of FDR. They gave him the initials FDR. He took us into World War II. He took us through most of World War II. And one of his inaugural addresses, he said that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. And that's exactly what's happened to this world right now. They've got the fear of this damn virus to the point where everybody's afraid to do something. And I'm not. I'm not afraid of the virus. What I'm afraid of is dying of something that I need to go in and get help for that's already in existence. And I can't do that. And this is not right. So I don't know how much more time I've got, but I want to get that off my chest right now and try and wake up some of the people in this city, this council, and everything. We've got to get this city back in operation like it's supposed to be. We cannot continue living this way. And I'm not going to do it. Now, there may be some things you might have missed, and I'm not sure I got everything in that I wanted to there, but don't worry, I will put it together in an email and send it to everybody here. So I'll be back maybe on a couple other items here in the council, and that's it for now, I guess.
Thank you, sir. Okay, is there anyone else on public comment wishing to speak? Speaker, please,
okay.
Please
Hello?
speak.
Yes.
Go ahead and speak.
Okay. I'm going to decline to identify tonight because of the Brown Act rights I have. But let me go ahead and start with the public comment. I would like to kind of springboard off of what Mr. Matthews just said. Not necessarily in full agreement with all of that, but I stated weeks ago I was in agreement with the lockdown at I think it was during the town hall meeting for about 3 more weeks. And we're past that point in time, and it appears certainly in Kern County we've had very little impact. I'm noting that the council is kind of spread out, but no one has a mask on. It looks like you guys are lightening up with some of the quote-unquote, restrictions on gathering. I believe that we should have an open meeting at City Council at the next meeting. There's more than enough room in that chamber room for people to stay apart, especially with respect to no more people than usually attend any given meeting. And just let people come in. I believe you actually had some people demonstrating outside tonight wanting to attend the meeting because they believe they have a right to have a face-to-face discussion with their representatives. So I believe we should do that at the next council meeting and have it open back up with some appropriate procedures. The next thing I'd like to comment on is the wastewater treatment plant, which came up as a subject, again, of almost no information provided to the public at the last infrastructure committee meeting. A number of us have been advocating strongly for quite some time, and I believe with agreement of the 2 infrastructure committee members that this plant should go on city property, and we ought to be able to run it on city property. That's entirely structurally feasible, operationally feasible, and it ensures that all of that water coming out of that facility can be used for the benefit of the Ridgecrest city citizens in respect to the water allocation that they have been given through the GA, and the fact that they've been told that they need to augment almost exactly as much as the plant will produce, which means a huge savings every single year to the end of time for the people in this valley. However, our city manager continues to negotiate with the Navy, and since he won't tell us a single thing, even though he's got apparently the land lease agreement pretty much finalized, we're just wondering why are we even pursuing that route? And I think it's time for the council to give their employee direction and tell him to cease negotiations with the Navy. We're going to put it on city property. It's the most beneficial to the citizens of Ridgecrest, and that's what the city council members are supposed to be about, is the best benefit for the citizens of this city. So I'm asking you to strongly consider doing that and proceed quickly towards giving that direction. We've wasted way too much time with these negotiations. We've We've been 8 years into being highly taxed for this plant, and we're building up a huge fund, which we add $4 to $5 million to every single year. By the time we finally get around to it, at the rate we've been moving, we'll have cash in hand to pay for the entire plant. But then what's supposed to happen after that when we amass this huge fund that people are paying too much into? And now I think that needs to stop also. I think the tax for the sewer fund needs to be modified appropriately, and we need to get moving for a plant on Ridgecrest City property and move towards recycling the water out of that and getting it back into the credit for the citizens of Ridgecrest. That's it.
Thank you, sir. Is there another speaker? Any other speakers online? Go ahead, speaker.
Thank you. My name is Mike Sanat. During the pandemic, we've heard that Gavin Newsom has repeatedly called California a nation state. Think about that for a second. He thinks and acts as though California is a nation state. Have we seceded from the Union without firing a shot? Governor Newsom was one of the first governors in the country to order a shelter in place. Most people in Ridgecrest weren't affected by the pandemic. It's our old normal. Walmart is still open. Most businesses are still open. If you want flowers, Walmart will sell them to you. If you want cigarettes, Walmart will sell them to you. To the flower shop owner and the smoke shop owner, you are non-essential, according to the state. To the bicycle shop and the automotive repair shop, why are you essential? There's no new normal. Arbitrary and capricious enforcement of constitutional orders from the governor is wrong. Now we know that any small business can be categorized as non-essential and shut down indefinitely by the police in a fear-driven state of emergency. How long will this go on? Well, the governor is saying things won't return to normal until a vaccine is developed. We're still waiting for AIDS and SARS vaccines. Ridgecrest has serious problems before the earthquake and pandemic, and now is the time for the Indian Wells Valley to address some serious issues with the city of Ridgecrest, issues that affect us all. Many years ago, supporters of local police departments had a slogan, support your local police and keep them local. The Ridgecrest Police Department consumes 70% of the city's budget every year. Year after year, it grows and becomes more expensive and requires more taxes. Many of the upset business owners calling into the town hall last week complained that their civil and constitutional rights were being violated when Governor Newsom ordered the beaches closed last weekend. Don Barnes, who's the Orange County Sheriff, said that he is not taking, and I quote, not taking enforcement action on this order. He was waving the American flag and giving the governor a good old one-finger salute. How does the sheriff do that? Who gives him the authority to overrule the governor? The answer is we the people and the Constitution of the United States of America. He is elected, and he is the most important thing this is the most important thing to understand today. The county sheriff is the only law enforcement official entrusted to protect your constitutional rights, and he is elected by you and swears an oath to faithfully defend the Constitution, the law of the land. Last week, the sheriff of Modoc County announced that the county would remove lockdown orders and allow businesses to reopen with social distancing and occupancy limits. The sheriff of Humboldt County, William Hansel, said, quote, as sheriff, I am the protector of constitutional rights in Humboldt County. And if an order is issued that I believe violates our constitutional rights, I will not enforce it, end quote. Well, there you go, Governor. Many cities choose to contract with the county sheriff for law enforcement. Orange County provides law enforcement for 13 cities. The Kern County Sheriff has provided law enforcement for the city of Wasco for 2 decades. Lancaster has implemented a hybrid policing model with the Los Angeles County Sheriff. The hybrid model combines the best of local community policing with the sheriff making all the arrests and providing the bulk of law enforcement duties. If there was one reason the city of Ridgecrest would finally decommission the Ridgecrest Police Department and hire the sheriff, what would it be? To save money? It will. To reduce inefficiency and unnecessary duplication with the county sheriff? That too. We don't need two police departments, especially when one protects your rights and the other violates your rights. Our government was founded as a constitutional republic. The rule of law means something. I don't support the idea of local police if it means you won't protect and serve instead of act like tyrants. While we're all brushing up on the Constitution, don't forget to read the Bill of Rights. An angry caller to last week's town hall asked the Ridgecrest police chief, who she could call to protect her constitutional rights. The chief said he was following orders and had no other answer. The mayor said, we don't control the police, but offered no answer. You'd think they would know better. I do not know about you, but that should send shivers down your spine. I'm sure that most of you missed it or too young to know what's inferred by following orders. No offense to the chief, who I like and respect, but where have we heard that before? This is a moment in history when the law loses respect and when reciting the Pledge of Allegiance becomes hypocrisy on its face.
Mr. Neal, your 5 minutes. Mr. Neal, I'm sorry. Mr. Sinat, your 5 minutes are up.
I want one more minute.
I'm sorry, sir.
I've devoted hundreds of hours to this community.
You
can give me one more minute.
I'm sorry, sir. If I do it for you, I have to do it for everybody.
Yeah, you've done it for other people before. You don't want to listen.
Okay, thank you, sir. All right, the next speaker, please. Do we have one online? Is there another speaker?
No.
Okay, thank you. Seeing as such there are no other speakers, we will go to council announcements. Does any council member have an announcement? Anybody? Okay, I see no council announcements. The next item on the agenda is the consent calendar. It's a rather long one, so bear with me. All items listed in the consent calendar are considered to be routine and non-controversial by the city staff. Consent items will be approved in one motion if no member of the council or audience wishes to comment or ask questions. If comment or discussion is desired by anyone, the item will be removed from the council agenda and will be considered in a listed sequence with the opportunity for the members of the public to address and the city council to address the items. I'm going to read those 5 items. Number 3, proposed action to approve draft minutes of the City Council of the City of Ridgecrest Successor Redevelopment Agency Financing Authority, Housing Authority, regular meeting dated April 15, 2020. The next item, resolution reaffirming and approving the annual investment policy. Number 5, authorization for the city manager, Ron Strand, to sign the notice of completion for the Crosswalk HSIP project, for the city clerk to file the notice of completion, and for city staff to release retention in the amount of $9,431.65 to the contractor SNH Civil Works within 30 days after the date of completion. Number 6, authorization for the city manager Ron Strand to sign the notice of completion for the all-way stop intersection improvement to South Down Street at Bowman Road HSIP project, for the city clerk to file the notice of completion and to release the retention amount of $3,954 to the contractor SNH Civil Works within 30 days after the recordation of the notice of completion. Number 7, a resolution authorizing the city manager to sign the notice of completion for the HVAC unit replacement, authorizing the city clerk to file the notice of completion and authorizing the release of the retention funds in the amount of $237,864 30 days after the recording of the notice of completion. Number 8, resolution approving the program supplemental agreement with the State of California Department of Transportation for the construction of Tamarisk Avenue. And Ridgecrest Area Visitors and Convention Bureau report. Is there any item that any person on the council would like to have pulled?
Number 4.
Okay, number 4. Is there anyone in the public who would like to have any item pulled. We're going to give you a little bit of time to call in. I'm sure you may have seen the agendas, so if you know if there's something you'd like, please do so at this time. Is that the only item council wants pulled, is number 4? Okay.
The RACB, I'm assuming we just.
It's a file and accept and
Yeah,
file.
and there's no way to have questions answered or anything, so yeah.
Not without him here.
Okay, I don't see anybody asking for any item on the consent calendar to be pulled, so approval of all the rest of the items minus item number 4.
I move approval.
Second.
Mayor Breeden.
Aye.
Mr. Blades.
Aye.
Ms. Stevens.
Aye.
Mr. Heyman.
Aye.
Mr. Maurer.
Aye.
5 ayes, motion carries.
Okay, number 4. Lindsay, it was you, wasn't it?
Yes.
Okay, your questions, please.
Yeah, I was just curious. I know, I think it's like quarterly we get updates on how much money we're earning that has been invested. And I was just curious, at one time when I was on finance committee, and I think it may have been before you were on, we heard from the hospital and they talked about they do a lot of like CD laddering, and we had talked about looking if there was options for investment, and I was just curious if we've looked at other options rather than just continuing with what we've always done.
Yes, we've actually we had a few meetings before the whole COVID situation started about looking into different options that we can do. It is something that's on our radar.
Can you pull it closer to you?
Oh, sure.
Thank you.
It is something that's on our radar, but with all of this happening, we haven't had a chance to finalize anything. So it is something we're looking at and working on.
Okay, so our plan will allow for that, the policy we're adopting, we could still do something different than what we have been doing.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
I do believe one of the other factors of not going that direction is that the interest rate at LAIF has been quite high.
Yeah, at the last quarter ending March 31st, it was 2.03%, which is pretty good considering.
Okay.
Considering the times, but not what it used to be.
Yeah, that's what I'm like.
I was amazed at how high it was when we saw it. So, yeah.
Just one more comment on that. We did spend, or not me, I should say, Sheree and her staff did spend a significant amount of time this last year converting from Union Bank to Mission Bank. So I do believe next year we'll take a look at that, but there was a significant amount of time in that changeover.
And that saved us a lot of money as well, correct?
Yeah, we're estimating about $17,000 in savings.
Nice. Thank you.
Are there any other questions from council? Are there any questions from the public on this particular item?
I move approval.
Second.
I don't see any questions. Okay.
Mayor Breeden.
Aye.
Mr. Blades.
Aye.
Ms. Stevens.
Aye.
Mr. Maurer.
Aye.
Mr. Heyman.
Aye.
Sorry about that. 5 ayes, motion carries.
You threw me off there.
My eyes
Thank
were
you.
too fast for my voice.
Okay, the next item, a resolution to approve professional services agreement with the engineering firm of QK Incorporated in the amount of $142,878 for preliminary engineering, environmental bid assistance, and construction engineering for crack seal work related to the 2019 earthquake. Mr. Culp, are you on the line?
Yes, Honorable Mayor, City Council members, can you hear me okay?
Loud
Yes,
and
sir.
clear.
Yes.
Very good. Well, I'm pleased to present this to you tonight. Our Public Works Director has been successful in being able to talk the Office of Emergency Services as well as the federal government into offering us some grant funds for the street damage as a result of the 2019 earthquakes. And very simply tonight, what we're asking for you to do is to approve a professional services agreement with QK Engineering or QK Incorporated. And we also are asking you to have the finance, or authorize the finance director to amend the budget to reflect all appropriate capital revenue and transfer accounts to create a purchase order for QK Inc. And we're also asking you to authorize the city manager, Ron Strand, to execute the agreement. I can answer any questions that you might have at this point, but the project is a crack seal project for the streets that had suffered earthquake or cracking as a result of the earthquake, in which Office of Emergency Services and hopefully the federal government will step in and help us fund. Now, Bart might have more particular information on the funding aspect of this, but that pretty much completes my report on this item.
Sir, I read in the agenda where it says that almost all of this is going to be paid back. Even though the money comes out of Measure V, it will be paid back by various entities. And so all but, I think 7% is being covered?
75%.
75% is covered, yeah. So I appreciate that, and I'd like to make sure we understand this isn't all Measure V money that comes out and goes out and it will be refunded.
Ron, what do you estimate the end cost is to us by the time we're done? Back to Measure V. I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot there. But.
Oh, for this project?
Mm-hmm.
I think we're going to be in the ballpark of about $500,000. For the crack seal project.
40.
So, because it says in the staff report, it says that a portion is going to be funded by the Federal Highway Administration at 75%, but CalOES is going to fund an additional 18.75 for a total of 93.75.
Yeah,
and then it says in the next sentence, the remaining work will be funded at CalOES at a rate of 75%. So you're saying...
Answering the first question first, okay? Sorry, this is Bard Lauer, Public Works Director. Answering the first question first, there'd be $750,000 plus this approximately would be the overall cost. So somewhere between $750,000 and $1 million is our initial estimate. The answering the second question is that there's about a third of it that was traveled well enough roadways. There are the arterials and a few of the major collectors that the federal government has decided that they wish to participate in. So that would be the one where we only have to finance about 7% of it. The remaining, only CalOES will reimburse us for, and we have to pay 25% of that. Did that answer your question?
So then how are we at 500,000?
No, it's... Go ahead, Ron.
I guess that was my mistake.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry to put you on the spot there, Ron. I was just trying to get my hands around how much money is going to actually, at the end when we're all said and done, come out of Measure V. Because I balk, not knowing where our finances are going to be at the end of this COVID thing, I balk at spending any chunk of money.
I checked before we started with this. There is more than enough money in the balance of Measure V to take care of paying this initially, and then we'll put the money right back in Measure V when we're reimbursed.
How long does reimbursement take?
I've seen it be as little as 3 to 5 months, and I've seen it be years, depending upon what the auditors say.
And then if we don't approve this, are we missing out on that?
Well, I don't honestly know if you've... I spent a lot of time driving the roads after the earthquake happened. We waited to do our initial evaluation until it was late August, early September, because we kept having aftershocks. And the cracks had continued to widen as well. So at this point in time, the roads, there are a lot of really new cracks out there. There's a lot of cracks where they've been sealed and it's widened out even further so that the crack fill material has sunk. So in other words, they were crack sealed maybe 2 years ago and they should have been just perfect. and it now goes like, I know the people in the audience can't see, but it goes, it's sunk. And it's not, when it does that, it doesn't necessarily attach to all the sides, which is what's supposed to prevent water from getting down underneath and into the subbase, which is what causes problems. I think in this case, this gives us a chance to do a good crack seal job. Now, this takes care of our arterials, major collectors, and that's about all. Okay, this does not take care of the minor collectors or the residential streets. This is just the major streets in town. And to leave them cracked, they will deteriorate faster. Once they get wide enough cracks, traffic will roll over them and start breaking off the edges. This is, I won't say it's a necessity, but it's a smart thing to do.
I agree with you that it's smart, but is it equally as intelligent to delay the decision? Can we still be reimbursed at these same rates if we delay till we know what our fiscal impact is?
Well,
not just for this project, but for the overall COVID experience that we are now a part of.
I would say the longer we wait, the less chance this project will be approved. So then we have the risk of, if we delay it, we buy it, and we lose the reimbursement.
And this part here, this is just the design. We need to have the design done before we can even start with the project.
Any other questions from council?
Any idea roughly when the project itself would start?
This is a very unusual project. I've seen small crack seals, but nothing to the size of this contract. We're expecting, Lauren, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's about 2 months for the design to be done, which would mean it probably would start in the fall.
Now, the other question I have is in regards to the type of crack seal that we're going to be doing. Is it different than previous crack sealing that we've done in the past in the city?
Generally when the city forces crack seal, they use a crack seal machine, and they do the smaller cracks. The big cracks, a lot of times they come through and use bag mix to do. We're actually coming up with a new design for wide cracks. We're not probably going to do Ward because Ward's going to be repaved and have the same type of things done, but the wide cracks on Ward are the ones everybody talks about. And they can be up to 2 to 4 inches wide. What we're going to do, what I believe that we're going to do, again, we're working on coming up with the design for the crack fill, is to actually do a straight cut on either side of the wide cracks and basically do an asphalt patch. So that, now I know that creates 2 cracks if it continues to do, but there'll be small ones again instead of the large ones. But there's a lot of the wide cracks elsewhere in town besides just Ward, but most people know about the ones on Ward.
So, and that's part of what this engineering study is going to do, is decide what kind of methodology will be used on which cracks?
We've basically said anything over 2 inches needs to have the wide crack. Anything under 2 inches has the regular crack seal.
Okay.
That was your question, right?
Yeah. And then will we get reimbursed? Do we have to wait until we're all the way done with engineering and the work being done to get reimbursed? Or do we get reimbursed with the engineering study and then?
I've seen it happen both ways, but since this is a separate contract, it's possible we might get reimbursed for this before the actual physical work's done.
And then there is no way that they could back out of reimbursing us.
We actually have the DAFs back from the feds where they've agreed that this is what they're going to take care of. And okay. Cal OES says all you do is turn the stuff into us and we're set.
Okay.
But again, the longer we wait, the higher the likelihood is that they may say, okay, you've waited way too long. You know.
Right. Or like the state saying the funds aren't there because of this COVID.
Even if it's just a matter of a month or two till we have a proper assessment on how our budget's going to be impacted?
Again, I can't say.
Well, I know Ron has a pretty good grasp on. Well, I mean, he doesn't have a crystal ball where he knows where everything's going to land, but I mean, I'm sure there's a rough estimate of how we're going to be impacted.
Well, with the engineering report, it'll take a couple months to get back. We'll know a whole lot more then. But my concern is, and it has been for the last couple months, is the longer we wait, the less chance we have of this, or the greater chance we have this project not being approved, and then we end up with roads that have been damaged by the earthquake. And when we have the opportunity to get back most of the money to fix our roads, we're doing it out of Measure V down the road.
No, I think what he's asking is, do you have any indication on what our tax revenues? Because I thought at the last meeting we were kind of talking about what we were looking. We were waiting until the beginning of May to kind of get some of those reports in.
Well, correct. I mean, the reason why we're waiting for the reports is that really nobody really knows exactly what the impact of COVID-19 is on the businesses, because a lot of it has to do with when and how we reopen.
Right. But do we have an indication of what? I thought we were going to hear at this meeting.
We are looking at numbers from HDL, and we're still compiling them. But yes, I did report at the last meeting. It looked like a 2-year deficit might be $1.2 million in revenue, but we do have that funding in unallocated in reserves to cover. So we're not going to have in other words, we still have the money in the bank. We've done well in building our reserves. Now, the big issue is that as we go through this thing, we're depleting our reserves. Mm-hmm. And I guess it's a policy decision of the council if we can delay fixing the roads for fear of having a cash flow issue and lose the ability to fix it, the funding, and they just fix it over time with our staffing. But as you know, our staffing is doing slurry seal, so we can take them off of that, do this, or I look at it this way: if we have the ability to get the money back, we should move forward.
Yeah,
and I understand where everybody's at with the cash flow issue. And I'm going to be talking here in a little bit about ways of addressing that. So it's really up to council.
So we do have enough money then to maintain doing our slurry seal program and expending this, even if it may take months to years of this getting reimbursed.
Correct. I think the worst effect will be is that we may not be doing other repair projects. We'll still be doing the slurry projects, but there may be an effect on repair projects in FY21.
Okay.
And that's one of the things we're going to be looking at through the budget is what do we anticipate our revenue shortage will be for FY20, what we're looking at for the effect of COVID-19 on our budget revenue for FY21, and those are the numbers we're still working at. And like I said, we have engaged our consultant in those numbers. And so, but it doesn't mean the state could actually come in and do another triple flip and take sales tax money and borrow it for 5 years and pay us back to us later on. We have no idea what the state's eventually going to do to try and balance its budget. But I still think at the end of the day, this is damage that was caused by the earthquake. It's no different than COVID-19. We're going to be incurring costs on that. That we have to. I just think if we leave our roads, we're just going to be paying a significant amount more out of the general fund or Measure V down the road to fix these if we don't take care of it now.
I agree, and I think our major hit in our budget is going to be TOT, because the hotels are running about 10% now, so we're going to take a major hit on that. I'm sure sales tax will be down some because of the restaurants and the small businesses, but you drive by Home Depot's parking lot and Walmart's parking lot, I think those contributors are going to be higher on sales tax. But, no one has anything to do at home except gardening and fixing up and do remodeling and stuff. But and I'm not trying to downplay the hit, but I'm in favor of moving forward on this.
Yeah. The previous council meeting we discussed, making sure that we're wise in spending our funding. And at the last council meeting, nearly all the funding we had was restricted funding that could not be used for a general fund purpose. In other words, cannot be used to bail us out for the situation we're finding ourselves in. So in that regard, that specific Measure V is similar in nature. We made a promise to the public to use this to fix our roads. In this case, we're going to get it back, and we'll hopefully bring the money back in and use it towards a roads project. But I get where you're coming from. I just still look at the fact is the longer we wait, now we have maybe a $750,000 bill that we have to take care of on our own dime down the road. And I would assume that we're going to be out of COVID-19 hopefully hereafter a bit.
Well, I think with what Bart said too, that the money has been tentatively agreed to be held or approved for us, that timing's of an essence here, because not only our budget, but the state's budget too with COVID-19 isn't guaranteed. It's going to be down the road. So I think if we have an opportunity to move forward, roads is one area that everybody in this town feels is one of our primary important items to stay on top of. So I think I'm in favor of moving.
I think it's the number one item.
It's the number one item, yeah. So I think it's a great idea. So I'd say let's move forward.
I have one more comment, if you don't mind, Bart. I think you mentioned that the previous crack seal lasted not that long. Are we saying that's just because of the aftershocks, or is it because of the crack seal that was used?
No, I'm saying it's 100% the aftershock. Not the aftershock, the earthquakes and the aftershocks. Sure. It widened things out. Crack seal in general can last anywhere from 2 to 10 years before it really it starts looking bad and needing, to be redone. Now, the two would be really high traffic. It would be, we have those seriously wide cracks that can be a problem as well. But in general, they last plenty long. And one of the things it does is it preserves the roadway itself by keeping water out of the base. Not that we have lots of water, but when it does rain, everybody notices how many more potholes there are. So that's why you want the roads crack sealed, so that you don't have as many potholes.
Thank you.
Okay, is there any other discussion from council? Is there any other discussion? Any discussion from the public? Is nobody? Okay.
I move approval of all items.
Second.
Mayor Breed.
Aye.
Mr. Blades.
Aye.
Ms. Stevens.
Aye.
Mr. Heyman.
Aye.
Mr. Maurer.
Aye.
5 ayes, motion carries.
Your turn.
Okay, the next item, Mr. Strand, you have the update.
Yes, Madam Mayor, members of City Council, I'm going to make my presentation up here. It's a little bit easier than spinning around and twisting my neck, trying to be attentive to everybody. As you know, last Wednesday we held a town hall meeting to discuss how our community may provide input on how we reopen our non-essential businesses. Councilman Heyman has been appointed to the Kern County Advisory Committee to be able to advise the Board of Supervisors on how we may open up the communities. I believe it was a very successful meeting. We ended up receiving about 161 email comments, and I believe we had 26 people that called in and provided comment. It was unfortunate that we weren't able to read. At the time, I believe we had 151 emails, but the decision was made at that time that if we read all the emails, that we'd have no time for the town hall meeting to listen to the folks that were calling in. The thought was to be able to get an idea from the business owners how they felt, as well as the community at large. And I do believe overall, majority of folks that emailed or wrote in were in favor of opening up the community in a responsible way. There are some that are still extremely concerned about the COVID virus and making sure that we don't open the community up too quickly and cause some sort of issue within our community. This last Monday, the Kern County Public Health began to publish positive cases by zip code. That was one of the frustrations that I believe that our community and council had, was that Mr. Suver would tell us we had 6 positive tests that came through the hospital, but we really had no idea how many people actually had tested positive that lived within our community. As of Monday, that's on their webpage now. Currently, we have had 3 positive tests within the city of Ridgecrest and 1 within Kern County. That puts us at a very low exposure or very low infection rate within our community, which does lend itself to show a couple things. One, that we've been following the rules, we've been social distancing. the businesses that have been needing to stay closed and the folks, wearing masks have done so. And so we're following the rules. Now, that also brings about an understanding is that we're still closed down. We have several small businesses that are in jeopardy of never reopening. And how do we go about reopening our community? Also on Monday, the governor did state that the state was going to go from stage 1 to stage 2 on Friday, and that they would be posting some guidelines on Thursday. Now, one of the important notes that he had is that they are going to allow the counties to be able to determine for themselves how they open up through stage 2. Now, they're looking at phasing of the stage. The initial phase is, opening up, like florist stores. So some of the list here that they had. Yeah, they're beginning to open like clothing stores, florists, sporting goods, with modifications. However, for some of the other stage 2 businesses like shopping malls and restaurants with seated dining, schools, and summer programs would remain closed. However, if the counties were able to get certified through the state, that they could then decide for themselves as a community how they opened up. They could be more restrictive or they could be more lenient, but they had to stay within the stage 2 process. Now, the president came out with phasing. He had a 4-phase process, but the governor has he calls it a staging process. So that's where we're at. So countywide, we have 1,045 positive cases with 620 in recovery and 11 deaths. Most of these cases are on the west side. And I had heard some comment from council in the past about the number of pending tests that are still posted online. Mr. Constantine provided an explanation for that yesterday during the Kern County Board of Supervisors meeting. Basically, the county only gets notified of the positive tests. Now, they know how many tests have been taken, but they're only notified of the positive tests, and they're not notified if something's negative. So what that 3,900 number that's sitting there is more likely they're all negative tests. Now, what the county has to do is have their staff then call to verify that's negative. So that's just a backlog of calls that haven't been made, or a backlog of calls that need to be made in the future, along with the ones that are currently pending that had been, taken within the last couple of days. So that number represents probably a significant number of negative tests. So when you look at the positive number, that's pretty much where we're at. Anybody have any questions on that? I know that was kind of a question point that several had.
Thank you.
Okay.
One of the questions I have, Ron, is that businesses keep asking, and I know they're calling the county and the public health department asking, when can I open, when can I open? Is there going to be a definitive list of who can do what and possibly when?
I think this Friday, the governor has stated
expecting to hear, yeah.
Yeah, this Friday, on Monday, he basically stated which businesses are going to be allowed to open, because he's talking about a slow phase-in. So this will be the initial phase-in of stage 2. Now, if you look at his whole stage 2 plan, there's a lot more businesses that are open there. That would include, restaurants being opened and schools and sports activities and that. So, but that's not going to be open. But he's going to give the counties the ability, if they can certify and meet a certain criteria, then the county can make those decisions themselves. And a lot of that has to do with, are your testing, your positive tests going up? How is your hospital able to, does it have capacity? Several factors I can kind of go over them. It's the stability of hospitals, personal protective equipment inventory, healthcare surge capacity, testing capacity, contact tracing capacity, and then obviously public health guidance in place. Right now, our hospital has done conducted 266 tests. 6 have been positive, and they've had no inpatients with COVID-19. So one of the things that we're looking at now, that as we move forward, one of the most important things I think we can do in our community is to make sure that we have robust testing available, so as we begin to open, that we can feel confident that if somebody wants a test, that they can have a test. Mr. Suver did state that he believes that at the end of May, that the hospital will have the ability to conduct at least 100 COVID tests and antibody tests each every day and be able to get the results back within 2 hours for the COVID test. He is going to be working with Matt Constantine of Kern Public Health to be able to get additional testing here free of charge, because the county approved the CARES Act money that came in to the county a few weeks back of $157 million, and a significant portion of that is being budgeted for testing. So he has reached out to Mr. Constantine, and they're trying to work on making sure that as our community opens up, that anybody who wants a test can be able to drive up and get a test. So that's going to be important for us to open. As you know, that we have a significant number of people that come in from all across the country to do business on the base, and the better testing that we have, I believe the more confident people will be that we can work our way through this thing, that if we have a flare-up, that it can be addressed early on so it doesn't spread, or if somebody comes from an area that may have, COVID-19 that's a little bit more infectious in that area, that they can come have a test, make sure they're not contagious, and then, do their business.
Okay.
Ron, I had a question.
Yes.
I was watching an address by the Department of Health, Kern County, and they discussed additional testing sites. I think they were trying to push them to rural areas. And I know we may not be as rural as places like Kernville, but has there been any discussion about sending one to us maybe?
Yes, that's what I was talking about, was having the county support a mobile test site here run through the hospital.
And sorry.
Yeah, because really the only two areas that will not be having mobile sites at this point in time is Ridgecrest and Tehachapi. But both of us have local hospitals that have been testing all along, and both of our areas have had low infection rates. They are looking at putting a mobile site in Kernville. I know that they haven't had, I think they've only had one positive test in the Kernville, Isabella area, but they do have to go quite a ways to get their testing. So we are going to be working on that the next week or two. I know that Mr. Suver has reached out to Mr. Constantine, and they are discussing that now. So money shouldn't be the issue because they have the funding for it. It's just probably more along the lines of the logistics of working something out.
And part of that guidance is coming down from the state to the county. Are they working out how tracing is going to be implemented?
Yes, they are working on tracing. That will be a responsibility of Kern County Health. And that's one of the things that when they self-certify, that's part of the county's going to have to be able to show that they have the ability to do this tracing effectively. So,
are there any other questions? Are there any questions for the public? I see no questions.
I just have a couple more things on this.
Oh, I'm sorry, Ron. I thought you were done. My apology.
Just on staffing end of it, I see no change in our staffing. We do have a few employees that are still teleworking at home. Obviously, Stage 2 does encourage that if we have employees that need to telework, that we can. That's part of the governor's plan. So we'll be following that, as things progress, more employees are coming back. As for opening City Hall, I do not see us opening City Hall until at least Stage 2 is fully enacted, and possibly Stage 3, just so we can control the number of people that may come to a council meeting. But obviously that'll be, a discussion that I'll have with council. But I would say at least not until we see, full implementation of Stage 2. Also, I do not see our summer programs have put on hold until we get further input from Kern County Health. I know that there have been discussions with Kern County on how we do our programs this summer, whether or not we allow it. So we'll have an answer for that here in the next couple weeks. So obviously we'll be following the guidelines of public health on that one. The next topic is that the last Finance Committee meeting that we had, members of the committee brought up the fact of how do we fill the hole, the revenue hole that is that's going to be caused by the shutdown of COVID-19 and the pandemic. The thought that was brought up by the committee was to put a temporary sales tax increase on the ballot this November. A half-cent sales tax for 12 months would net about $2.2 million, which would cover any sort of revenue shortfall that we would have on this. You know, we've worked very diligently in working to, build a reserve, and part of one of the reasons why you have a reserve is for rainy days such as a pandemic and a national emergency. So I guess the thought would be for discussion amongst the council is that are we interested in moving forward on that or entertaining it? Because if we do, we have to have a resolution to the county by June 15th. I mean, there are pros and cons to it. I mean, I think one of the pros for us is that we can build our reserves back up. Another pro would be is that majority of our community did not lose a paycheck. Our 4 top employers were not laid off, and now our small business owners, our restaurateurs, our florists and dog groomers, they've been affected significantly.
Yeah, but that would be my concern is while there's, because I hear a lot of complaints about this, that we only think about the people who work in those top 4 employers. And I think there's a significant amount of people that were affected, and I feel like you'd be kicking them when they're down already by adding more tax on.
But I will say, though, those that have been affected are not normally paying sales tax. They're just collecting it. For restaurants, for example, they're not going to be paying the sales tax. The 6,700 people that work on the base that didn't lose a paycheck, and the people that work at the school district and the college and the chemical plant who have suffered no loss in this would be paying that additional sales tax. They would just be collecting it. But most of those businesses don't really pay the sales tax because they get most everything wholesale, and then they sell at retail.
Yeah. You have the staff, though, right. But some of those places.
The small business person would be paying it when they go somewhere else.
Yeah.
That's the point. You're right. The small business is not going to be paying that half-cent, but the owners and employees will be.
Correct.
So they will be impacted.
Yeah.
Correct. Like I said, it's just the thought of getting the city back whole again. I know a lot of the employees that were laid off were covered through the PPP program, the Payroll Protection Program. So the sooner we come out of this, the better. But we still have a hole. It's a policy decision on the council whether you want to move forward or not, and it's not a popular thing. There are other ways that we can. We obviously, this is not something I'm recommending today, because we still need to be looking at our budget to see what our actual shortfall is going to be, and are there other ways of filling this gap. But I don't see a way that we're not going to be using, our reserves to work through this time. It's just a matter of how quickly we get our reserves back to where they need to be, or if we just work it back over time.
Is it something we could kick to like the finance committee? Something that could be
this recommendation actually came out of the finance committee.
Yeah. And isn't this our ability to do this is based off this being an emergency situation, right?
Well, we could put it. I mean, because we are still eligible to do the resolution. It's during the regular presidential election time. We don't have to declare a fiscal emergency to put it on the ballot. But we could put it on for a temporary time.
And it would have a finite, guaranteed sunset. It is this amount of money, and it's to shore up our in-house budget. And
it'd make up for the revenue that we lost, because right now it doesn't. Now, the federal government during a subsequent CARES Act bill may provide funding directly to the cities for loss of revenue in the counties and the states. And if that's the case, this would be unnecessary.
Right. Because I saw they're drafting another $1 trillion bill.
Yeah, this may resolve itself. I don't know.
More money.
Yeah.
Right.
But
borrow more from China?
The payroll protection, though, to clarify, only covered certain things like payroll and maybe a little bit of their rent
Utilities.
or
Rent and
things,
utility.
but it didn't cover their loss in revenue.
No.
So that's where I want to clarify that even though they got those loans, which hopefully most people won't have to pay back, it didn't pad their pockets and make up for their revenue recovery. It allowed them to be able to keep their employees on. So I think to say that they're okay.
No, I didn't say the business. I said the employees that work for those businesses. I mean, the employees were made whole either through unemployment insurance. In fact, some employees made more money on unemployment than they did working a regular job.
Right.
Yeah, the $600 a week.
Right.
Yeah.
The problem with the PPP is 75% of it has to be spent on employees and payroll tax.
Exactly.
And only 25% can be spent on rent and utilities.
Right.
Which means they're falling behind on at least rent.
Right.
So you're right, and they've lost their income in addition to that.
Right.
So it's a Band-Aid.
A temporary, very temporary Band-Aid.
But if it gets forgiven, they can at least have their employees working and at least contributing to the economy, where otherwise they'd be home sitting collecting unemployment. Some people don't want their employers to get that money because I know of instances where they're making a lot more money on unemployment than they were making working.
So by when would we need to make the decision?
Well, we'd have to have a resolution passed to the county by June 15th. I'm not asking for any direction from council tonight. This was a topic that came up with the finance committee to explore. I think that we need to take a look at what we believe our actual revenue shortfall may be.
When are we getting our budget?
I believe
She proposed May 27th in your email.
Yeah,
so if you
May
can check your
27th
email and
is-
respond to Sherry.
So could we set this up in a future council meeting, and it's a discussion for the city council and the benefits of why, we even toyed around with the idea of it, because, from a budgetary standpoint, it makes sense. From a tax standpoint, well, taxes never make sense to everybody. Nobody wants taxes, but I think it would be important for us to sit down and look at it from a budget standpoint of where the city's at, how this would benefit us, the fact that it's short term, but it could shore us up and prevent, layoffs. It could keep us in a financial stability at a time because nobody foresaw what's come at us this last year. Right. And so I think it'd be important for the council to be able to discuss this as a group and lay it out, put down the benefits and the risks and the non-benefits and.
Well, I still think it's a little premature because we still need to take a look at the CARES Act. We need to look at what the effect is on our sales tax and the effect. We know what the effect on our TOT is. I mean, we can see that by driving by the hotels. We know that immediately. Sales tax is another somewhat of an unknown. So I'm not asking council to make direction. I just, want to make sure that we're, discussing this because staff, we have to come back and we'll show you this is where we're short. We were approximately $300,000 ahead in our TOT before COVID-19 hit. So we may not be as far down on our TOT and our revenue projections as we think. But we still need to be talking about how do we take care of our budget because we have made a significant stride forward versus where we were at 2010, 2012 when we basically, I think we had like $81,000 in reserves with some god-awful low number. And, we have to understand we've had two natural disasters in one budget cycle. And so it's been a stress on staff. It's been a stress on the budget. Some of this money will come back. We had our response money from the earthquake. We've submitted a claim. My concern, because the time it was taking to move everything forward is that when the next emergency happens, now you're in queue because right now everybody's dealing with COVID-19. Everybody's sitting at home. So we will get that money back.
The other concern I have, sorry, real quick.
I was just seeing that we've got some public. Go ahead and finish.
Wouldn't want to have a discussion like this as long as we're not open to the public. I think it would be really important if we're talking about adding a new tax, even if it has a sunset. I think we would want to do that in an open meeting. And so if that means we have to figure out how to hold an open meeting outside so that we can have public comment or something, I would strongly urge us to make sure that before we made a decision like that, we would be...
Yeah, I wouldn't ask you to make a decision until we have a very good handle on what we think
we need a lot more
our revenue loss is going to be. But I think it's prudent to at least talk about it. And then if necessary, we approach it in a formal manner. But if we can find a way of getting by, then I would say we get by. And right now, because everything is such in flux, we're really not going to know for a little bit.
I think it's important to discuss. We're often told, I know we're waiting on public comment, but we're often told that we as a community need to take care of ourselves by the federal government who employs most of the people. So it's worth discussing at length, I believe. So,
that's why we wanted to bring it back to council when we have all the information. But let's, does anybody have any more comment, or we can go to the public? Okay, caller, I'm sorry it took so long, but please identify yourself and ask your question.
Hello?
Hello, caller, go ahead.
Okay. Yes, this is interesting that the proposal of thinking about a new tax came up in relation to this. I'd like to just point out a few facts that I've been very familiar with. This is Mike Neal, by the way. I'm not inclined to identify myself this go-around. I'm very familiar with city finances after being involved down there for over 15 years. The TOT tax, if you lose 2 months of income from that, it's probably a couple $100,000, maybe a little more than that. You haven't lost any property tax. Your three primary sources of income, as you all should know, is a sales tax, a TOT tax, and a property tax. Property tax is not going to change 1 cent. Okay, the TOT tax is going to go down for maybe 2 months. The sales tax, who knows, What we're hearing here is something that I think is actually very premature. I mean, it's kind of a philosophical thing to batter around, but it's not going to be worth talking about at all unless we have some actual numbers presented, both what we know, but we have solid data on, like, okay, here's what our income has, how it's reduced in the two areas of TOT and sales tax, which I'm not even sure you can get sales tax because that tends to have a long time delay as far as getting sent to us. And what's already been mentioned before is what are our high possibilities of reimbursement for any of these income hits. So we should not neglect all aspects, both in income, reimbursed type income to the city, and actual realistic projections. Now, when I hear a half cent sales tax for a year, we want to get $2 million back. I can tell you right now, I guarantee you that's way overboard. There's no way we're in 2 months' time, or even 3, we're going to take a $2 million income hit to this city's income. And the people's sentiment in this town, I think, was shown very clearly last year after over a year of lobbying all around the city by the city manager on the subject of the Parks and Recs tax, which is only $49 a year, and that was voted down 80% no vote. So I think you want to think a little bit before you even consider proposing more tax on people. You can sit and say, well, most of these people in town did suffer an income hit. Well, but you can't really speak for them. You don't know what other costs they've incurred that's costing money out of their pocket because of this. This is typical to what we call hand-waving kind of discussions in engineering on the base, and people tended to get shot at pretty severely when they came up. They didn't have numbers. They didn't have good, solid facts. They waved their hands. They started pulling numbers out of the air and didn't have anything solid to talk about. and that was not generally tolerated very long, most meetings on the base in the years I was there. So if we don't have something good, solid to be presented to the public that's going to convince them they need to vote to tax themselves some more, I think we should just leave it alone. We've got plenty of surplus in the city budget, and oh, by the way, with the padding in the budget from the measure, whatever it is, V now, that they bumped up to a full 1%, that's what's created your surplus, and it's going to continue to, it's going to kick right back in, and all you're going to really have, I believe, is a temporary dip in income, and then things are going to come right back up over time. So you better have a real good case to make for presenting possibilities of taxing your people more.
Thank you, sir. Okay, is there any other comment from the public?
I have a quick question.
Sure.
Also, just to clarify, we still get our 1% Measure V tax on online sales as well, correct?
No. With certain, because of the Wayfair Act, yes, through Amazon and Wayfair and a few of the other businesses, yes, we do get the 1%. However, the 1% Bradley Burn goes into the county pool. And that's divvied up by the brick and mortar proportionality within the county. But one of the things that the governor also did was he's going to allow businesses that have less than, I believe it's 500,000 in gross sales to be able to keep upwards to 50,000 in sales tax receipts for a year tax-free. So we might see a little bit of a cash flow issue with that. We'll eventually get it back, and we'll know here, I believe, within the next month or so, if we have any businesses that have taken advantage of that.
So they have to file that they're going to do that.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, I see we have another caller. Caller, please identify yourself and come online. Caller, identify yourself, please.
This is Ronald Porter. Hello?
Hello, go ahead, sir.
This is Ronald Porter. The reason I'm calling is it's funny that the first thing we do is we want to tax the people more. We don't talk about how we can cut the budget in the city to meet. I mean, granted, we need to do operations, but the city has to look at ways they can tighten their belt before they go after the people for more taxes. And I think it's far too early, and it's just, I don't know, I see this dictatorial that this is the first thing we come up with is get more in our pockets. In California, we already pay 60% of our income in taxes. It's about time we start looking at how can we better spend those taxes. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Let me just state for what we talked about in finance was that we wanted to explore this, not that we wanted to propose it. We asked staff for information which seemed logical and reasonable, and that we aren't not even going to discuss it fully other than to get information from staff to bring it back to say, is this something that we want to look at? It may not be, but we don't know until we have those budget numbers. We don't know where we are. We just wanted to be upfront to tell you we wanted to talk about something in finance because it seemed logical to tell you. If that wasn't logical, I'm sorry, we could have done it silently, but it wasn't our proposal to do that. And the chair, please speak.
Well, yeah, I agree, and I think we were looking at the budget from a perspective of preventative measures. You know, we're looking ahead, we're forecasting out with what's going on. Is it going to negatively affect our budget? And if we can identify areas where we can see it coming now and we can take measures, we want to do that. If we look at it and we say, well, no, we can handle it on our own right now, and we can tighten up our budget as has been presented tonight by some, we definitely want to do that. And so I think it's strictly at this stage a look at the budget, see if it's, are we going to be negatively impacted, and it's better to be preventative about it than it is to wait till you're hit hard 6 months down the road and try to do a measure when you're kind of tied up with it. So I think it's smart, it's wise to look at it and take everything into consideration and leave it at that. So
There's no argument there. But the point is the first thing you look at when the rest of people are in trouble is how do we tighten our budget first? And that wasn't said, and I think it's very important that's the first thought.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Yep.
I'm sorry. I thought you were off the line. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it, obviously we mention it as a way of everything has to be on the table. There's several cities out there that are looking at laying off employees, furloughing, reducing services substantially. And, we're in a unique situation that we're on the verge of having about $3 billion spent on our base to rebuild it. So we're in a little bit different position, but we have worked very hard to build our reserves for this rainy day. And like I said, I don't know when the last time we had 2 natural disasters in 1 year. I hope we don't have any more because some of us are getting a little tired with dealing with them. But like I said, I do think it's a little premature because we need to take a look at our numbers. We need to see what happens with different versions of the CARE Act and see what we can do budget-wise. But I also believe that, before we start making significant changes in our serviceability, which we are very low to begin with, that we at least, discuss these things as a community if necessary. And it may not be. We'll see.
Okay.
I have one more comment that I might go ahead and get out now because it started with the COVID-19. And back to the county supervisors, and I had promised that I would get back, get to the county supervisors following that town hall meeting that we had. And I just wanted to let everybody know that the following day I did call county supervisor and discussed, the outcome of our meeting and gave a general overview of what, what the people in Ridgecrest, are thinking at the moment. And so they've got that information and hopefully it's in consideration. And they advised too that currently there's nothing else to report on until after they get through Thursday and Friday. I hear mixed results on, Thursday's the day you hear something, or Friday, but so that's all I wanted to add to the COVID-19.
I would imagine we're going to get the governor's guidelines more likely during his noontime briefing.
Yeah, so it did get done, and back to further COVID-19 discussions at the council. Are we going to continue to do this each council meeting until this is resolved or not a priority issue?
Yeah, my recommendation is yes, because I think that until we're fully reopened back to normal life, I think, to a degree. We may get to a point to where we still are doing social distancing. We may can back off. It won't be such an issue. But I think at least for the next couple of months until we see some significant direction in reopening our economy, I think we still need to have, or at least I still need to get input, or at least have an opportunity to provide you guys my insight and what we have going on.
Good. And data.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, sir. All right, the next item.
Can you bring me the clicker, if you would, please? Thank you.
The next item is discussion and potential action on limiting installation of 5G technology in Ridgecrest. Lindsay, you asked for that item?
Yes, I did. I have a brief PowerPoint. I attached some stuff in the agenda, a few videos and a few articles, and just for the public and anyone who didn't have the opportunity to look at that information. I kind of have a summary here. So one of the videos, if you see down in the corner there, was from a former Microsoft Canada president on 5G, and it's a quick video, 10 minutes. I highly recommend you go on and check that out. Part of wanting to put this on is for you all in the public to educate yourselves on this. So basically, to summarize what he had to say, 5G has not been tested. It gives off radio frequency, and they know for sure it is absorbed into the human body. 5G uses millimeter technology, which is a lot stronger, you'll see in a minute, than the other 2G, 3G, and 4G. 5G, you can see in the middle there, it's a small cell. To have the signal be as strong as it needs to be, you will have antennas placed possibly every 3 to 10 homes in every neighborhood. So very closely spaced proximity. Also, he talked about there was a 14-year study done, cost $25 million on 2G and 3G, and it proved without any doubt, it was even double-checked by another study, that there's clear evidence of DNA damage and cancer from 2G and 3G. So keep in mind, when 5G comes on board, it's not eliminating 2G and 3G or 4G. It's operating with all of those. So you already have 2G, 3G, and 4G. 4G hasn't had much study done yet either. So you're just continually adding more and more on to that. To continue to summarize his video, he talks about the FCC regulations are over 20 years old. There are no doctors or scientists on the board. FCC would be who regulates this. That's the Federal Communications Commission. He informed you in the video that Switzerland and a number of other countries, their regulations are much more up to date and over 100 times more stringent. You can see down there in the bottom corner, Switzerland has halted the rollout of 5G in their entire country because of health concerns. So, because I've seen some people, and I think we received maybe one email stating, oh, this is conspiracy theory. As I just showed you for the 2G, 3G, this isn't a conspiracy theory. There's studies that have been done. When an entire country is halting it, it's something to take into serious consideration, especially because of this. The Telecommunications Act of 1996 prevents the telecommunication companies from being sued or liable for the safety or health of their products. So if these products, we allowed them to be installed into our community, and then people started having serious health issues, those people wouldn't have the ability to get help for their medical issues that they've incurred. And you can see here, this has already happened, and this was not even with a 5G cell tower. This is a school in California, an elementary school. In a short time after a communication pole was installed near the elementary school, 4 students and 3 teachers were diagnosed with cancer. 4 very rare cancers in the students: brain tumors, kidney, liver cancer. After the 4th case showed up in the children, over 200 parents showed up at the school board meeting demanding that that antenna be removed. And finally, Sprint did agree to remove the tower.
Over 200 parents showed up at the school board.
Somebody.
Who is that?
Yeah, somebody needs to mute their phone. So,
can we disconnect them, please?
Scientists. So another thing that was included in there.
Can,
It's
feedback. Yeah.
But it's somebody on the line.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We're not at the point
So,
of public comment yet.
Yeah. Anybody who's calling in, can you make sure you mute your phone right now, please? So another thing that was included in the agenda was I included a link. Internationally, scientists, doctors, and other organizations, over 350 scientists and doctors from over 40 countries have signed an appeal to halt 5G. The cited concerns were the numerous recent scientific publications that shown that EMF affects living organisms at levels well below most international and national guidelines. Except, of course, America's, because ours hasn't been updated in 20 years. But they cite increased cancer risk, cellular issues, reproductive issues, as well as neurological. I think I've also seen like sleeping is another problem, as well as they're finding it affects both plants and animals and insects. So the other thing. Oh. I don't know. It's not clicking anymore. Okay. So a few years ago, SB 649 here in California was passed through the legislature just barely, which removed the power from the cities and counties to regulate this, but Governor Brown actually vetoed it. A lot of, like, the League of California Cities was very against this because obviously it's always wanting to retain power at local levels. So I just wanted to point that out. Can you click to the next one, please, Carrie? Okay. And so the reason why I wanted to bring this to our attention is because all over the country and frankly all over the world, people are looking at this and taking action against it. So I wanted to bring it to our attention. I know that Lloyd had provided a memo in our agenda, but I don't know how much information he looked into, because there are cities in California who are moving forward with blocking these towers and antennas from being installed. There's also an amicus. There's a suit that has been filed against the FCC. And, you know, I think before we've joined in on amicus briefs, people included in this suit against the FCC are the National League of California, National League of Cities, not just California, Bakersfield, Emeryville, San Francisco, Hillsborough, Santa Monica, Fresno, Marin County. Those are just California ones. There's ones all across the country, though, that have joined. I mean, even in Nebraska, Alabama, literally, it's a pretty long list of people who have joined to take a stand against this being forced on them. So that's my summary for now of what I have. I don't know if anybody else had any information they wanted to share. I know you had mentioned there was a study that you had seen, Dr. Heyman, at one point as well.
I mean, the information is out there as far as the negative effects of 5G. I had included a study that was in Scientific America that just kind of gave an overview of some of the similar things that you had addressed earlier, so I don't want to go back over it. But they talk about the millimeter wave and I'd have to find the study here, but I think I can kind of quote some of it off. But they talk about the millimeter wave and at the depth that it absorbs into the body, and that certain cells, peripheral nervous system, meaning the nerves on, exiting your spine and going through your body, can be damaged under a low exposure, which is kind of alarming, and that the cornea of the eye could be damaged. They also talked about the effects of the 4G over the period of time, because there hasn't been, substantial study on the negative effects of that too. So, I mean, to me, it is alarming to see, that much information out there, and then to see other cities doing it. My question is, Bakersfield, you said, has made a formal decision to go against?
So they're listed as one of the parties in what has been filed against the FCC.
Okay.
There's a lawsuit. Lloyd, I forwarded that to you in an email, so you can look over that if you're still there.
It's also...
I'm sorry, who is that speaking?
I think it was...
That's me. That's Lloyd.
Okay.
Okay, there was a lady speaking.
The law... If I may, this is Lloyd.
Please.
That's the lawsuit is described in my memo. It's currently pending before the Ninth Circuit, and it's a consolidated case. So there's many cases that they put together in this one case at the Ninth Circuit. So that's still pending. We don't know how it will come out.
Is there an opportunity there to do the amicus brief like we've done before. I saw down at the bottom where some places have done that to kind of send our message that if we decided to as a council, that to voice our opposition to local control being removed.
Sure, I'll look into that.
There was a comment that you made that I thought so many times things are you can if you wish, but when one of the comments you made, Section 649 provides that a local government must approve requests for modification and collections that do not result in substantial change to the physical dimensions of the existing wireless tower or base station. That I'm sure that comes from one of the section code 6409A, and I'm thinking must is a pretty significant statement. It limits and says you will do this. And so do you have any comment on how that may affect what we're talking about here?
Sure, Madam Mayor. This is Lloyd. So, of course, our office, we don't have any dog in this fight. So we'll write as aggressive an ordinance as the City Council directs us to write. What we tried to describe in that memo is that it will be an uphill battle because the cities that are resisting this are typically in litigation. The cities that are, let's say, avoiding legal challenge are going aggressive on the aesthetics, which the city does have control to regulate under the law, and but that has its own downside of requiring more staff time to review and approve plans and things like that. But like as we tried to describe in that memo, the law is pretty clearly favorable toward the industry. So and taking away the ability of cities to regulate the radio frequency health effects. So there would be that vulnerability if, depending on how we write it, but there is that, I just have to caution you that that's the thrust of the law is to be very favorable towards these telecommunications companies, and I haven't seen a case go the other way. But like Ms. Stevens said, we don't know how this current case at the Ninth Circuit will turn out. And that one, let's see, it's called, I named it in the memo, it is City of Eugene, Oregon versus FCC, and many other cities throughout the country are included in that as plaintiffs.
So what are we looking for tonight, Lindsay? Are you just giving information or?
Well, I think at the last meeting I brought it up, and it seemed like there was interest of bringing it forward and seeing what we wanted to do as a city, because this is being rolled out, and so if we want to get out ahead of it, we do have that option because many other cities are doing it, and there hasn't been an official ruling in the Ninth Circuit Court. So if you don't get out ahead of it, then it's already here and it's too late. So I just wanted to present the information out here for us to look at and decide if we want to look at doing anything, whether it be joining an amicus brief, whether it be taking a stance against it aesthetically, and passing an ordinance. There's many other options that cities have written ordinances that we could look at what they've done and adopt something similar. So.
Can I ask a question?
Okay.
Go ahead. I want to ask a question when you.
No, well, go ahead.
This is Rika, the city clerk. I'm just curious, how does this affect the Navy by any chance? Anything at all?
Well, actually, I sent an email. Ron had sent one, and then that one was from like last fall. And actually, I sent another one just last week. And actually, before I misspeak on who it was, just a second. One of the, I don't want to misspeak on who took a stance against it in the military. So there are actually more and more military leaders are taking a stand against it, like the defense secretary, because there's actually concerns over it jeopardizing GPS signals. And so they're actually very kind of, whoa, we don't know enough about this, the millimeter wave and how that's going to affect GPS systems, which, as we know, are pretty important for military weaponry.
Yeah.
So.
Thank you.
Yeah, brilliant brief. There was a few things I was going to say, but you've said mostly everything. I was just going to discuss that very point, that this is in the national news, so I'm not speaking at all on our Department of Defense's behalf, but in the national news, even President Trump has went against, I think it was the UK. They also had large discussions with Australia about, it'll always get tied into Huawei's role in the 5G technology, that it's essential. So I don't have reports in front of me.
Explain who Huawei is.
Oh, I'm sorry. Huawei is a company based in China. The company is essential, and there was cited strong enough security discussions between President Trump and the UK that he indicated there is some information we would no longer be able to share. Now, I'm talking all in generalities because it's not for me to say, but that should say a lot right there just for the department, you know, how it affects our national security. I think it's important to think about that, let alone the medical health implications. Those are big. And I was going to tag on to my original complaint when we first talked about this last council meeting is aesthetics. If you have to have this every 5, let's just say even 10 homes, let's just say it's just on every block, it's still pretty significant to have a small cell tower. You know, I think that's a significant impact to the citizens. So I think it's good we discuss it. People start thinking about having a small 5G cell tower in their area. I think that's important.
What is
They're
small,
talking.
Kyle?
Oh, so when I say small, all the images I went out and did research, these, you know, the 4G and all those other G towers are pretty large, but 5G would be almost like the size of like a light pole or something, you know, maybe a little bit bigger, and certainly not as aesthetically pleasing, right? It's
the size of a light pole on top of a pole?
I would say you would be, yeah, and you would have, I think, Lindsay, you had a picture of one that was near that school. It was probably a little more, if you go back, it's a little more eccentric than that. I wish I would have brought a bunch of pictures because I went and looked and see what that would be. So aesthetically, inside of your neighborhoods, that could affect property value. It could affect. Now, I'm never one. I want to say this to the community. I'm never one to halt technology. I'm a pro. Let's be on the edge of technology. I haven't heard a large enough pitch out there in any technological forum to see what it did for industry. Now, if I understand that the whole reason this technology exists is to penetrate walls. It's so people can walk around inside of 2-story, 3-story buildings or basements, and it can get through. But that should say a lot about the health impacts. So I think it's good that we discuss it. I don't know if any specific direction is going to come out of this other than either I hate to always say this, push it to a committee to discuss, maybe not policy, but discuss ordinances. If that's what we're going to do, if it comes to aesthetics, and certainly to get it out there in the public for people not to think it's some conspiracy theory, not at all. This is really just, I think, unless I'm, one city councilman's point of view, we're just trying to look out for the community on several fronts.
And those antennas are placed every 100 to 200 meters, so which is not very far. I was kind of surprised by that the short distances that they're looking at placing them. And some of the other things, too, that I think is, it's not just the antenna for, like, basic use of it, but there's also antennas capable of beam forming, phased arrays, massive multiple inputs, and what's also known as massive MIMO, which pose unique challenges for measuring exposure. So there's variations of that 5G through the, different usages, the antennas. But I was trying to wrap my head around, okay, every 100 to 200 meters, you're talking a pretty full array networked out. If this data is correct,
sure,
that, that's a pretty massive amount of antennas. I mean, back in the day, we were talking, you had an antenna on that mountain and on that mountain, giving coverage to cell phones. But
And I also, Mr. Neal had sent an email to all of us of some calculations that he has done, and I know he was going to call in, and I did include, because he asked for his graph and calculations to be shown, so I included that for later on, because he was going to talk about the calculations of the amount of waves that if you went on a walk down the street, of what you would get hit with.
Right. Is there any way to measure that? And one of the concerns I have, Lloyd, are you still on?
I am still on. I just had it on mute.
So in reading through the legal Federal Telecommunications Acts, when I read through this, my understanding is that the telecommunications companies can come into a city, place their 5G antennas on there, and based on that, there's these laws kind of protect them, is what I'm gathering, and they don't have to tell the cities that they're doing this. And so, am I correct in that assumption?
Well, I wouldn't go as far as they don't have to tell anyone anything. It would depend on the particular rules of the city, but
so let me kind of ask this.
They're putting it on a city poll. They would need to work it out with the city. Yes.
So I've had several just people in town ask me about all the increased activity that you see going on in town right now with the new towers and a whole lot of new antenna structure. And does anyone on the city council, has anybody been approached with this, or has the city itself been approached as to what's currently going on?
Are they not required to pull a permit? They would be required.
Maybe that's one for Public Works Director. But
Heather,
usually any work in the city right away requires a permit.
Heather Spurlock is shaking her head yes, that they would have to get a permit. They have to get a building permit and go through plan check. I'm just even just to add an antenna to an existing tower, she's saying, so that everyone in the public and not here can hear.
And so the other question I would have is that in joining an amicus with other cities, are we looking at a financial increment?
Let's see. I'm not on mute. I'll have to see what's out there. When we did that on a different case, it was an advocacy group that was happy to add cities to its list, and there was no charge at all and didn't require any attorney time on our part either. So I'll just have to see what's out there and
okay. Because I think the big
talk to people.
I think the big concern is if the telecommunication companies are able to put new antennas and proceed with their advancements, but yet we're going off of studies that, as Councilman had mentioned earlier, that are 20-year-old data on health and safety studies. That's a little bit concerning. I would like to know that if what's being proposed to be put out in the public and affecting all the people in our communities, what's the current safety standards or guidelines that are we brought up to date? It doesn't seem like it if we look at the legal.
Sorry to interrupt you, Doc. I didn't mean to. I just got a lot to say all the time, I guess.
Go right ahead.
Question for City Manager and Madam Mayor. If we are concerned in the least, and maybe we want to keep a public eye on something like this, and permits do get pulled, would it ever be reasonable? And tell me if it's not. That those permits should go through City Council, so it's more of a publicized ordeal.
That is actually what one city when I was reading through, one city opted to do because of the aesthetic aspect. They decided that they would be reviewing the permits for the antennas individually as one way of the aesthetic limitations. And that's what I think Lloyd was talking about. If we looked at it from that point of view, it would require more staff time. But I think I personally, as someone with small children, and from these studies, children are more at risk because their skulls are thinner than adults. I think it's something pretty serious to take into consideration, and that it possibly could be worth staff time, especially near schools like we saw there, and making sure that we're not exposing hundreds of children gathered there with a cell phone tower right outside the building.
Are you asking? Okay, you can answer.
Yeah, that might have to be a change in our ordinance, because normally our entitlements go through a certain process, and only certain things go through the planning commission. So it'd have to be a change that would have to go through Lloyd's office.
Let me ask another question, if I may, and forgive me if I sound ignorant on this subject, because quite frankly, I've learned more from this than I knew on it before, and I read a lot about it, but I grew up in upstate New York on a dairy farm, and when Niagara Mohawk put 5-inch cables across our cow pastures, and they gave the farmers $1,000, and all the farmers were saying, the cows are dying, and the calves are not being born, and the bulls are no longer productive, and everything that happened in the farming community in upstate New York was blamed on Niagara Mohawk's 5-inch electrical cables going across our pastures, and they gave every farmer $1,000, and at that time, $1,000 was $100 million to us local farmers, and nothing really ended up happening. It was just a scare tactic. There were cows died because they got old. They quit milking because their lifespan of milking and being impregnated again was not there. Bulls, there was a lot of reasons, and I'm not trying to say this is a scare tactic, but I am also understanding that if this is going to inhibit our Navy's ability to continue to, that is my second concern over the health of our people, is and businesses don't come here because we don't have 5G, and Navy can't get contracts because of that. I don't want to inhibit that if it can be done in places that are out on the base, that are not in your neighborhood next to your house. And so to scare us all because we're all going to have all sorts of cancers and things like that, I'm going back to my childhood and listening to my dad saying, but it's $1,000, Peggy Lou, it's $1,000. But Daddy, we're all going to die. And that was the thing. And I'm not saying this is that, but I would rather look at it from a point of view, let's get some more information before we start making rules that may inhibit our ability to grow and inhibit the Navy's ability to continue to do what they have to do, if that is indeed what they need. I'm not saying we do it tomorrow, but I'm just saying let's look at it.
So just like with the GSA, the Navy would be exempt from what we do because...
Would they be what?
They would be exempt from what we do. So it's their own decision if on base they install the antennas.
Yep, my only concern on this is from an economic development standpoint.
That's the other part.
Almost every place I go throughout the state, Nevada, 5G pops up on your phone. It's becoming a standard that people are accustomed to having the speed on their phone. One of the complaints I think we've listened to time and time again is that our internet is very poor here. That our ability to download stuff, I mean, I know this is huge when it comes to telemedicine. I understand the potential health aspects of it, but you do have several communities. I even think Bakersfield, the last time I was there, has 5G now. So not saying we shouldn't do something about it, but I also know that, you know, we sometimes have a hard time recruiting people. They're coming here with 5G, and then we have 4G, and we're backwards. That's not going to bode well for our economy. But I do think maybe our balance can be made. But
I just think it's, sorry to interrupt real fast, but I think it's really interesting that the people living in Silicon Valley, let's just be real, they're like the techies of techies. They didn't want it in their communities. So if the techies of the techies are more concerned about their health and aesthetics than having high-speed downloads, I think that's something to take note of. And I don't think it's a scare tactic when entire countries aren't allowing it. And we know from studies that the 2G and 3G are bad, and this is just amplifying that on in. So I understand economic development concerns, and I'm not saying, and many of these places have just said, until we get more information on how this is going to affect us, let's not have it installed and then find out it's horrible and people have all kinds of health issues, because then it's almost impossible to revert back. So that's my point. And I do know we have calls too. So.
Well, real quick, so the 4G, I mean, cell phones been around for almost 20 years? What, 18 or, I don't know exactly, but.
I'd say probably easy 25, 27
and
years.
so, 25, 30.
And, you know, we had this argument during this whole time that, you know, that there was going to be negative, you know, effects. And so I know the argument has been around a long time. And my viewpoint as well, we haven't seen, you know, dramatic negative effects from, you know, the cell phones over these last few years. Now, whether or not there's some, you know, fine, hard to measure, immeasurable type, you know, activity, that's fine. It may be. In regards to the Navy, this is a Navy town, this is a Navy base, and the Navy's mission, and to be successful and state-of-the-art and on top of their game all the time, if 5G is necessary for that, they're going to have it. And so who are we to tell them they can't have 5G? So it's different than the Silicon Valley, where their economy and their business may be a little bit different. But the Navy is our, you know, primary employer here. So I don't think that we're in a position to dictate anything to the Navy as far as their being successful in their overall mission. So my viewpoint is I want to see data. I mean, if we're looking at, you know, some 10-year, you know, some of the studies state that we're, you know, 10-year-old technology, and we don't know the effects of it. So if we need to get brought up to date on it, I think it's important that we follow through with staying on top of 5G and the negative effects that it may or may not have. But I think in a lot of ways our hands are kind of tied in what we as a council, you know, want to do with it at this point in time. I mean, have any substantive, you know, regulating on it. So
sure. So I have a few more comments, but I guess I'll wait until we get through the calls.
Okay, is there any? Okay. All right, caller, please identify yourself and come online and ask your questions. Is there anyone there? Okay, caller, please identify yourself and ask your questions.
Yes.
Hello?
Hello.
Please speak.
Oh, okay. This is Dave Matthews. Lindsay, thank you for bringing this up. I've heard of 5G for quite a while. Never paid too much attention to it because it's something that I don't think that I use or get involved in because I don't have a lot of that kind of stuff that would use that. But before I had a career with the civil service on the base as an electro-optical engineer, I had a few other careers. One of them was a radar technician in the U.S. Air Force, the fledgling U.S. Air Force. And the system that I was working on was a millimeter radar system that was used in some of the fighter interceptors that they had at that time. And I will have to look into what the frequency of this 5G is and so on, because when you say millimeter waves, it kind of triggers a bell, but I don't know what the actual frequency is. And that, to me, would make a difference, because the system that I was using at that, I was teaching at that time, did have a mock-up, so to speak, in the classroom of the system. And when I talk about a waveguide, I don't know if any people are going to know exactly what I'm talking about, but it's like a horizontal 1 inch wide piece of metal with about a half-inch thickness, maybe, or something like that. At least it's a frequency that this system was using. And anyway, we had protocols, because we didn't know, you're familiar with microwaves. Well, microwaves are sort of an offshoot of some of this technology that we were operating under at that time. And what microwave does is heat things up, and lo and behold, some student got in front of this system one time at the antenna, grabbed a hold of the waveguide to try and turn the antenna, and the system was on. It wasn't supposed to be on, but it was on, and it burned his hand. So I know a little bit about what microwaves can do. But there again, it depends on the power level and the frequency. So I am going to look into this a little more, thanks to you, and see what the frequencies actually are. And one of the places you might get some information is with a guy by the name of Leo Laporte. He's called the tech guy. He has a broadcast on the weekends, and he's been talking about 4G, 5G, and all for quite a while, because it affects the cell phones. And I've been listening to it, but I've never looked into it. So I will start looking into it and get back to you with whatever else I can find. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is there another speaker? Is there another person online?
Yes. He waved his finger.
Speaker, please state your name and ask your questions or statement. Hello, speaker?
Yeah, my name is Gavin Swanson. I'm a resident here. Yes?
Go ahead. Thank you.
Yep. My name is Gavin Swanson. I'm a resident here in Ridgecrest. I live here with my family, and I work on base. First of all, I think that it's very important that if the council is going to provide what they consider to be evidence of anything, they need to provide sources for that, and it would be helpful if that was provided to the public ahead of time. One of Ms. Stevens' very first points is that the Swifts have halted their rollout. They have not halted their rollout. It was misread. They were doing a couple of sort of pauses in the rollout for aesthetic reasons in a couple of areas, and that was widely spread through the news system as a complete halt. It is not. If you're worried about security for Huawei and those sorts of things, sure, go ahead and worry about that. Make an ordinance that says you can't install Huawei equipment in our town. I'd be all over that. The school that she referenced where people got, quote, cancer from the tower, it was not a 5G tower. There is no evidence of any link to that tower having caused any of that cancer. And I would like to thank Councilman Heyman for standing in to the point that the city needs to stay out of the Navy's business for technology concerns. If the Navy has technology concerns, they will make those happen, right? We have to keep up on technology concerns for their recruiting and retention, but not anything of, oh, we have this 5G and it's going to interfere with their equipment. They'll step up if there's a problem. Getting new businesses into town and economic development, like Mr. Strand mentioned, that's going to be huge. Keeping and retaining people here when we can't give them the bandwidth that they need for all the new tech that's coming out, that's not going to fly. We also, as Mr. Strand mentioned, we have, I see all the time on Facebook and other forums about bandwidth issues in town and, not like in certain companies that provide service and things like that. This would provide with about 10 gigabits per second of data rates and 10 gigs of throughput. This would provide a reasonable alternative to other broadband services in town. And if anybody's worried about towers and how many towers there are going to be, yeah, they're about every 500 feet or so. But I would urge you to go look around town now and look at the towers that we have out here. Go look at the light poles. Look at essentially any light pole in town. Every third, fourth, fifth one has a little box on it already because they're already transmitting this information on utility things and other things that the utilities are monitoring around town. You're not going to notice, you haven't noticed these boxes now, you're not going to notice another little box hanging out there. It's slightly larger than the wireless router in your house. So again, I would urge us to get sources for anything put out because somebody mentioned this isn't conspiracy. This is conspiracy theory stuff. We've got plenty of that running around with the whole COVID thing. We don't need our council people pushing conspiracy theories on the city. And I really urge you not to waste any more city dollars investigating this or trying to ban it or anything like that. It's ridiculous. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Gavin, I just want to say all of the things that I talked about in this presentation, they're attached in the agenda if you want to go review those.
I will gladly review and refute every point in there.
Okay, thank you, sir. Is there another caller online? Caller? I see no callers online.
There is.
Now you are. Caller? Is there a caller? Please identify yourself.
Okay,
caller?
My name is Mike Neal.
Go ahead, sir.
Okay, I don't know which, of you looked at what I sent out yesterday on this subject, but here's the meat of what I sent out, and I hope we can actually have a discussion and don't necessarily chop it off 5 minutes so I can answer questions. I also need to actually explain how these systems work and some of these things that Mr. Heyman alluded to before and so forth, and so you guys can understand this. Now, what I did was I looked at all the specifications for 5G systems that are specified by the FCC according to how much power that they can put out, and it's probably a little over most laymen's heads, but, I don't need to go into great detail there, but what I did was I looked at, okay, we're going to have a station about every 100 meters. And so I said, okay, let's do a typical scenario, and this is going to be representative of you walking down the sidewalk. Now, this would also apply to you being in your house or whatever, because these things are going to be in every street and every light pole, every 100 meters, possibly less than 100 meters from your house, depending on where you live, and so forth. So if you look at the graph, and just keep in mind that there's a long-standing standard. It's a NAVAIR, NAVC radiation hazard standard that says that you should only be irradiated with 10 milliwatts per every square centimeter of your body for 6 minutes. Okay, if you go past that, then you need to start getting worried and try to prevent yourself from doing that. And this is for people like myself who will work, I just want to point out I worked for the antenna design and microwave circuit design for 33 years on the base. So I understand this science. So if you look at the graph, you'll see there starting at, it says 1, but it actually starts at 0. That power level is over 3,000 milliwatts per square centimeter. And obviously, as you would expect, as you go away from it, it goes down. And if you get far away from it, if you manage to stay far away from it and live far away from it and never go down the sidewalk, never drive down the street, never go anywhere, you might be safe. But you're not going to, because we don't like lockdowns, do we now? So we want to get out and do things. So if you live and you go out around your city, this is what is happening to you all the time. And if you take the average of just that, which is representative basically of anywhere you're going to go at any point in time, you're getting irradiated with 151 milliwatts per square centimeter of power on your body. That's 15 times that standard. That standard has been around for a while. Now, they didn't actually work in millimeter waves, but if you look at the graph that I looked at, it started at lower frequencies, it climbed, and then it peaked off. It just leveled off at this 10 milliwatts per square centimeter. And I guarantee you, any kind of radiation that you're going to be around, you don't want to be sitting and getting irradiated with that kind of power density on your body for several hours, much less 24 hours a day. So what they're allowing them to do, and it's because of the science and what they want to pull off, requires this. What the 5G, how it actually works, is they want to get tons of data through it. So what they're going to do is squirt these highly concentrated beams of energy from these antenna arrays, because the antennas are very small, so they can put a bunch of them in any given box. They're going to squirt it out here. Once it sees you, they're going to squirt it out at you, grab you, and then they're going to dance this thing around all over the place thousands and thousands of times per second to try to grab everybody else's signal. And in order to keep the throughput high, they also need to have lots of power. So I guarantee you that the maximum amount of power that they're going to be allowed to function at, they're going to function at that. And this is what it's going to be. Now, I've seen all this stuff before, all the, various kinds of things out there, talk about all the health effects and so forth and so on. And I've seen the one letter written by numerous scientists, and what Ms. Stevens referenced before in her presentation, where it says, when you have 350 scientists and doctors from 40 countries signing an appeal to halt 5G, you need to think about that for a minute. That means there is some serious concern by people who, they understand this. They understand the thousands of studies that have actually been done in Europe. They've been done. But here they haven't been done because the telecom industry is like big pharma in this country. They put the money out and they get what they want. You, on the other hand, have a sworn duty to represent your people, and it's your obligation to protect your people. Now, the Navy, like I said before, they can have what they want. They can put 5G on their base, cover it, and zap everybody all the time, and that's their decision. But we don't have to do it in Ridgecrest, and we don't have to have this kind of power irradiating people 24 hours a day just because we have this idolatry of technology or this greed of lust supposedly for all this money that, this nebulous, who knows what it's going to be that's going to benefit so great and give us so much economic benefit.
May I ask you a question?
Go ahead.
We wouldn't let Mike Sinat go longer than his 5 minutes. I would like you to try to wind it up as quickly as possible. We have 7 seconds. Can you wind that up, please, sir?
Well, that's why I asked if we could have an actual discussion this time. So I'm trying to give you enough information so you'll actually be informed.
I understand that. We are hoping to do the same ourselves.
Then I'm going to be done. And if you people care to find out any more, you know how to reach me. You already have it. I gave you my phone number on my email. And I hope that you will talk to me or go out and look at what Mrs. Stevens has provided tonight and educate yourself, because what I've heard tonight is, unfortunately, a large amount of ignorance. Just, it doesn't say you're stupid. It just says you don't have the facts. And you need to have the facts. And I am going to be speaking loud and long at any kind of road anybody's going out. We want to make more money from this and neglect the health of our citizens. Okay?
No one is saying that, sir.
Their health is primary, and if you don't toe to that line, and provide protection from the money-greedy telecom industries for our people, that you're being called to account.
Mike, please, can you wind it up?
I'm done.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate your comments. I am going to look more fully into it, and I'm sure the rest of us will. Thank you. Is there any other callers who want to speak? Caller, please identify yourself and present your piece.
Yes, this is Marilyn Neal, and I would like to also thank Mrs. Stevens for bringing this forward. I think it's a very critical issue in our community. And as others have said, yes, the base may want or need their technology. That should be their decision. But as citizens of Ridgecrest, I highly urge you to look deeply into this and way beyond any economic advantage. I'd like to give you one little example that came to mind. You know, people love speed. We like to get where we're going fast. We like to be able to get the job done. We like to feel, you know, super successful at whatever it is that we want to accomplish. But Mr. Strand should know, as a former police chief, that we set limits on how fast people can go in a vehicle. Because why? Because we don't want them to earn the money that they could earn if they could get there faster? No, because of safety issues, not only to themselves but to those around them. And that's just one little point to consider. I'd also like for you to consider that just on April 24th, Dr. Magda Havas, PhD from, I believe, Trent University School of Environment, put out a report, did a study on the effects of 5G on COVID-19 cases. She had this person had heard all the claims about 5G having an effect on COVID-19 and thought, okay, I'm going to do this actual study. So they did. And what the study showed was that in the states where 5G has already been rolled out, COVID-19 cases per million are 95% higher, and COVID-19 deaths per million are 126% higher in states with the 5G. Now, that's just a little snippet of that study, and I'd be happy to forward that study by email. But one of the things that I'll also read a small quote from this. So how could exposure to 5G frequencies in the sub-6 gigahertz frequency band affect the number of cases and the number of deaths attributed to a virus? The current radio frequency guidelines in the U.S. do not protect public health. They are based on a heating effect for short-term exposure. If you live within 400 meters of a cell phone base station, you have a greater risk of developing cancer and a greater risk of neurohormonal dysregulation. And this is based on similar frequencies currently emitted by 5G antennas. Numerous scientific studies document impaired immune function, make individuals more susceptible to viral and bacterial infections. COVID-19 had a great impact on the elderly, as they often have suboptimal immune function. But Sage and Kirst from March 27, 2020, provide a list of more than 20 studies documenting a disrupted immune function from exposure to low-intensity, non-ionizing radiation. This disruption occurs at levels well below the FCC guidelines. They go on to say that the scientists have been signing petitions and appeals to place a moratorium on them all over the place, but no one's listening. I'll just read this last line here.
Marilyn, we're coming to the end of the 5 minutes.
A harder time healing when it is constantly bombarded by radio frequency radiation. So my point is this. Okay, we've gone through all of this shutdown. We've gone through all of this trauma, all this economic disaster because of a virus that has affected a few people.
Marilyn, can you forward that to us?
Our children and our grandchildren.
Marilyn,
this needs to be taken.
The 5 minutes
seriously.
is up, please.
Well, this should have been a discussion rather than an item,
Marilyn,
rather than
please.
Public comment.
Please, Marilyn, thank you. Please forward it to us. That way we can read it. And for ourselves, I appreciate your call. Thank you. Are there any other callers out there who wish to speak? I don't see any others. Give you a couple more, 20 seconds, 10 seconds. Okay, Kyle, you wanted to speak after that. Did you still want to?
No, ma'am. I think there's plenty been said.
Okay, is there anybody else who wants to speak?
I do. So, granted, it might be said that we don't have our data peer-reviewed and referenced out, but I think some of the data that's in here, I would put enough to it that I think I'm going to read it to you here real quick. The World Health Organization's International Agency for Research on Cancer, the IARC, classified RFR, it's radio frequency radiation, I guess, as possible carcinogenic to humans in 2011. Last year, a $30 million study conducted by the U.S. National Toxicology Program, NTP, found clear evidence that 2 years of exposure to cell phone RFR increased cancer in male rats and damaged DNA in rats and mice of both sexes. The Ramazzini Institute of Italy replicated the key findings of the NTP using a different carrier frequency and much weaker exposure to cell phone radiation over the life of the rats. Based upon the research published since 2011, including human and animal studies and micronistic data, the IARC has recently prioritized RFR to be reviewed again in the next 5 years. Since many EMF scientists believe we now have sufficient evidence to consider RFR as either a probable or known human carcinogen, the IARC will likely upgrade the carcinogenic potential of RFR in the near future. So if we know that 4G is damaging, but we're using safety standards from 11 years ago, or 20 years ago, but here they refer to 11, so we could look at some of that. I think it's concerning. I think there's valid information out there to warrant concern about whether or not we're getting too much radio frequency of several different sources. So I can give you an example. Back in at the onset of radiology, they thought it was really novel to analyze your feet, similar to like Dr. Scholes is doing today with heat sensitivity, but they did it with X-ray. Dr. Röntgen, who pioneered radiology and the X-ray itself, they thought this was a unique, really cool tool. And so they would have you stand and they would irradiate your feet and look at your feet and thought this was great technology. And later we found out that too much radiation into our bodies was very damaging to us. It could cause sterilization, cancer, bone tumors. These people were getting cancers of their feet. So it makes sense to me that chronic exposure to a low-frequency radiation field has potential to cause damage. They know that it causes damage, so we're not going to dispute that. But a few millimeters of depth absorption and causing damage to your peripheral nervous system, what I know of the peripheral nervous system and the nervous system in general is quite often when it's damaged, it's irreparable. So I would be concerned if my peripheral nervous system is being damaged several millimeters of depth into my skin, because it says here millimeter waves are mostly absorbed within a few millimeters of human skin and in the surface layers of the cornea. So your eyes. I have a brother that's pretty much blind now. He served in the service. He worked in microwave. He did cell tower antennas. He worked on the top of New York City trade centers. This is what he did for a living. Well, he's kind of blind right now. It's not running in the family. Do I know that that's caused from radio frequency? I don't have the data to prove that, but I know that he has that issue going, and that was his trade. And he put towers up. He climbed towers. He went through the whole business of it. So, yeah, that's not scientifically backed data, but it's subjective, clinical, possible evidence. So anyway, so the cornea can be damaged, your immune system can be damaged. So I think it warrants concern on all communities to determine whether or not we have the current information to make sound, safe decisions for our children, our communities, based on what we can gather. If we can measure this radio frequency on the streets, as Mike Neal had mentioned earlier tonight, fantastic. Why don't we hire someone to come in and walk around town, or if someone else has got 5G in a neighboring town, maybe they need to be measuring that radio frequency and giving us hard data so we can make sound decisions on it. So anyway, that's kind of my 2 cents on it. I don't think that there's argument too much on whether or not it can be damaging. I mean, look, like I said, look back to previous examples of technology, and we later, even drugs and medicine and the pharmaceutical companies putting medicines out on the market, and then later we find out, well, they weren't too good for us. They were causing all these side effects and symptoms, and so then they get taken off the market. So I think we need to continue to look into the safety effects of this. And
well, since we know it is in Bakersfield now, why don't we ask if they have done any studies from an independent authority, I don't know who that is, and see what's happening there.
I think that'd be a great idea.
Well, and I also would be curious to find out from Bakersfield, because they are listed on that suit against the FCC.
Well, I would rather get it from somebody who's not pro or against.
Right,
but,
and the
well,
argument
but what
is,
I'm saying is Bakersfield's listed in that suit against the FCC.
Yeah, remember you said that. Yeah.
So I'd be curious if it's in their town and they're listed on the suit, what's going on there. But I'd also like information from Lloyd on if this is similar, where we can join the amicus brief at no cost as well, and more details on that suit.
and I'd like to know if 5G is in our community.
Yeah. Have we had permits pulled for that?
So,
Okay, so what we're saying is this deserves some more looking at. Let's get some more information. Let's, Ron, can you talk to the city manager in Bakersfield and see what
I can see what they're concerned if it was for aesthetic purposes or public safety purposes.
Okay.
And I'd also like information, and I guess I can look at that some more, on what some of these other cities in California, what they've adopted, their language options for how they review or...
Well, that's what I was going to say. If we got this from Bakersfield and we understand because they're local, they're kind of like us, and then see where we are, and if we think we want to go further, then let's send it to a committee, maybe org, and see what we can do there and come up with some. So
frankly, I wouldn't want to see it to go to org because Mr. Maurer didn't even stay for the presentation, and I mean you're kind of just now getting up to speed on it.
Well, as I was telling Kyle, I spent the weekend trying to read both pro and con, because I could see where you were coming from, and I read a lot of pro, and I'm thinking, okay, so I don't think you can say the committee is biased. Send it to another committee. I don't care, but it's just that I would like to see us look at it from a reasonable point of view.
I would like to see it kicked to a committee. I think I'm guessing infrastructure would be a good one. I don't remember who's on infrastructure committee.
myself.
I think because from a pro side of things, being on the leading edge of technology, it's always a good idea, even though Ridgecrest traditionally lags behind. And looking through all the arguments I can find, the only industry I could see it benefiting is maybe the hospital.
Well, that was where I saw a lot of the pro was from
just because of the technology, because it could penetrate through the walls and it could provide the speed that they're using their machines at. That's great. They're operating fine now.
And there was some.
So I don't know.
There was some even in oil, but I thought I'm not going to worry a whole lot about oil right now.
No, and I know we're discussing this at length. I think it's important if we're ever talking about the health of anybody to. I mean,
I don't care what committee. I just thought that org is one that doesn't have a specific goal in any of these. You're not going to. We're going to come up and look at it and give you good information. If you don't want to go to org, I don't care where it goes. I don't any more than infrastructure is you and Mr. Mauer. Yeah. So if you don't want it to go to org because Mr. Mauer isn't here.
Yeah. If you look at the AT&T coverage map, most of the large cities have 5G now. I believe even Tehachapi's in the coverage area, including Lancaster, Palmdale, Point Mugu, Ventura. So it's pretty widespread.
That's what I saw when I looked. I was looking.
That doesn't
for
mean
the pro.
Because every other place it's moved forward in that we can't get out in front of it if we want the option still.
Well, yeah,
correct.
That's the point.
So, and that's why I was bringing it forward. But I'm on I created the Economic Development Committee. It didn't even exist. So economic development is pretty important to me, but I rank health and safety and property values above that. So I think it's worth us making sure we're really considering this and taking it seriously. And if we need to send it to a committee, I think that's great. I think, infrastructure, sure.
Yeah, and my want to send it to a committee is so that even though it's harder during this COVID time, is that you have public input. So people are coming and saying, overwhelmingly, we don't care about these, whatever the situation is. We don't care about these facts. We care about these facts. And there's arguments that can be made.
That's kind of what I wanted to, because there's studies on both sides of this COVID thing saying this is nothing and this is everything, and it was.
I've heard the same thing about COVID, that it's a conspiracy theory, and I've heard the opposite. So
I want to see real facts, and I'm not saying these aren't, and I'm not saying the pro aren't.
That's my main concern is getting true, objective data. Because I'd hate to sound like a fence rider, but, looking back at 20 years of cell phones, my ear hasn't fallen off, and no one else's I've known has. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like, I think we need to just know as much as we can about it, because it doesn't make sense to wait until, you.
Exactly. I agree. All right, so Ron, if you'll come back to us.
Yeah, the fortunate thing is that we're normally the last to get everything in history. Last to get 3G, last to get 4T, 4 LTE. So we're probably going to be the last ones to get 5G. So, I think we have time. Just from history of being in this valley and going through cell phones from the very beginning.
Yeah, I think the closest 5G to us is maybe Mojave. There was a T-Mobile.
Yeah, actually, the closest one is Independence. It's just up the road from us.
Yeah, T-Mobile has leading sites here, I think.
They have the towers there.
Yeah, Bishop has it, Mono County, Mammoth has it. Yeah. So it's running all the way up the highway.
5G?
Yes, according to the AT&T map. If what I'm seeing is correct.
That's the one I saw. So, okay. All right. So, Ron, you'll bring it back. You'll bring that item back to us, please. Okay.
Back to council or back to the committee?
Back to council.
Or can we...
Do we need to... I think she wants to have it come back to council on, the options, and then we could decide on the committee from there if we want to look at ordinances.
So you're looking at information concerning what Bakersfield's done and why they're engaged in litigation?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then also, Lloyd, if there's the organization for the amicus brief that doesn't require us spending money.
Okay.
I will look into that.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, now we're coming to the ordinances. Second reading and adoption of ordinance 2002, an ordinance adopting and enacting a new code for the city of Ridgecrest, California, providing for the repeal of certain ordinances not included therein, providing a penalty for the violation thereof, providing for the manner of amending such code, and providing when such code in this ordinance shall become effective. And so, Rika?
Yes, this item was originally brought before the council and read for the first reading on April 15th. It was duly public noticed that we would be having the second reading today with 10 days notice, like it should have been. And since that meeting, I have received no public comment, no council questions, no concerns at all. And so unless you guys have some questions tonight, I'm here to ask you to make the two motions to adopt.
So we never heard back. After we posted the substantive changes, basically that helped kind of with like Mr. Whitnick and some of the others' concerns, I guess?
I assume so because they never did contact me again.
There was the only questions that seemed to be were what were we changing? And as we said, we weren't making any substantial changes at all. And as Rika showed us in various, the code that was and the code that's proposed, there is very little changes enough, and then eliminating some of those that were redundant. And this seems to be a way of making it more appropriate for us to deal with and not saying, well, is it this code I'm supposed to follow or is it this code? So is there discussion from council on this item?
We have a caller.
Okay, caller. Please identify yourself and speak to the issue. Caller? Are you there, caller?
Yes, I just had to turn the TV off. Just wanted this, Ronald Porter. I'm still going to put this forward. One is this is in violation of California law because of it has all the substantial changes in it. At the last meeting, the city council says there weren't any substantial changes yet. They have 6 pages of them on the website. If this ever gets challenged, they may throw out the entire code. Each ordinance needs to be addressed separately so that people have input. It's a violation of the Brown Act on that issue as well. Let's do it right. Take it. Says this isn't just renumbering. This is making substantial changes. And as so, they can't do it as a group. You can make number of changes, but you can't do the rest of it. And if someone ever challenges in court, they may throw the whole ordinance system out. So you better be careful what you're wishing for. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there, Lloyd, can you address that at all?
Yes, sorry. Madam Mayor, so if I understand the caller right, what I'm hearing is that every change had to be done individually. I'm just not aware of any such rule. So the code is being adopted by ordinance the way that any ordinance is adopted and the way that any code chapter or section is adopted. And I'm just not aware of any law that this violates in any way.
Okay, thank you, sir. All right. Are there any other callers who would like to address this issue? I don't see anybody speaking. Council, would you like to address anything while we're waiting to see if there's any other callers?
I have none.
Council? Okay.
I want to give opportunity for...
Well, I wasn't going to cut them off. I was just, nobody's called in. Right. Are there any other callers, please? If you'd like to speak, please do so. Are there any calls that you can see coming in? No.
And just to clarify for them, this is the final reading, and so it would be adopted after this, and when would it go into effect?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know if this one says 30 days or not. Does it say 30 days on it?
Lloyd, this
all ordinances go into effect 30 days after adoption.
Okay.
Okay, I see no callers. Is there a motion? or is there any more discussion? Okay, a motion, please.
We have to go to the next slide for the motions.
Okay, is there a second?
The ordinance says 30 days.
Okay.
We're going to read the ordinance.
I make a motion to waive reading in full of an ordinance adopting and enacting a new code for the city of Ridgecrest, California, providing for the repeal of certain ordinances not included therein, providing a penalty for the violation thereof, providing for the manner of amending such code, and providing when such code and this ordinance shall become effective.
Second.
Mayor Breeden.
Aye.
Mr. Blades.
Aye.
Ms. Stevens.
Aye.
Mr. Heyman.
Aye.
We have 4 ayes, 1 absent with Mr. Maurer, who left because tonight is his birthday.
Okay, the next one is we need to motion to adopt.
Yes, I make a motion to adopt by title only an ordinance adopting and enacting a new code for the city of Ridgecrest, California, providing for the repeal of certain ordinances not included therein, providing a penalty for the violation thereof, providing for the manner of amending such code, and providing when such code and this ordinance shall become effective.
Second.
Thank you. Mayor Breeden.
Aye.
Mr. Blades.
Aye.
Ms. Stevens.
Aye.
Mr. Heyman.
Aye.
4 ayes, 1 absent with Mr. Maurer.
Okay, then we have item number 14, which is approve a resolution of the City Council adopting certain fees per the direction of the 2020 codification of the Ridgecrest Municipal Code.
So as I presented with the first reading, this resolution establishes all those fees that nothing's changing. It just establishes them by resolution. So in the future, we can change them without having to go back and completely change an ordinance. Okay. And I listed them all out individually on the ordinance. There's an exhibit there attached so you can see them all. So everything that's referenced in the new code that you just adopted as accepted by resolution is now in this resolution. Should we just take a motion?
Is there any discussion on this? Okay. Is there any public comment on this? I'm going to give you another 10, 15 seconds.
And this doesn't, because this is resolution, it doesn't require what the last one required with
Correct.
the 2 different motions.
Correct. Just one motion to approve the resolution.
Okay. I see no call-ins, so council?
I make a motion to approve the resolution of the Ridgecrest City Council adopting certain fees per the direction of the 2020 codification of the Ridgecrest Municipal Code.
I second the motion.
Mayor Breeden.
Aye.
Mr. Blades.
Aye.
Ms. Stevens.
Aye.
Mr. Heyman.
Aye.
4 ayes, 1 absent with Mr. Maurer.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Committee reports, finance.
Did not meet.
Thank you, ladies.
We did meet.
We did.
We did when we went through the discussion of the budget that we're going to come back and then.
Has it been?
Was
Wasn't
that
that the
before or
last
after
meeting?
that would have been?
You're right. It was after. It wasn't.
I think the only one that
The
has
same
met
one. The same one.
since
Okay.
then is infrastructure.
Yeah. Thank you.
So infrastructure did meet, and we had a lengthy discussion over lighting and landscaping, the annual report for those. Originally, it was slated to come back tonight, but because we had a number of questions and concerns and things that needed to be clarified, I believe that has been delayed some. Trying to remember, we had a very brief update on the wastewater treatment plant, which was basically the same update that was given at the council meeting. And I think that was pretty much it.
Economic development.
We haven't met since the last council meeting.
Parks and Rec.
Have not met.
The RACVB. Melissa, thank you.
Madam Mayor, members of council, I've got a quick update for you from the RACVB. They've been taking a proactive approach towards everything that's currently happening. They have been streaming commercials on major television channels. The first one is encouraging safe stays within hotels targeting the community, hospital workers, or essential workers that don't want to be around their family in case of exposure. And they've also released a PSA that they had worked on, and it's also being distributed with other organizations like the Economic Development Corporation, the Chamber, and along with the city. They've also been sending out advisories, travel advisories. They're shifting from their message of safety first into, as we move into certain phases of reopening, of safe traveling practices. And lastly, our tentative next meeting should be May 20th, virtually online on Zoom, and that will be posted shortly. And that's my update. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Other committees, boards, or commissions? Did any of you all meet? Pardon me?
I think KernCog probably did, but I don't know.
They canceled their last
Did
meeting.
they cancel it?
Okay. City managers report?
Nothing at this time.
Okay. Future agenda items. Other than coming back with Ron's report, I don't know of any.
I also had on there the temporary sales tax to come back as a discussion item.
We are already getting
No.
hammered on.
No.
On Facebook.
No, that won't be. Yeah, that'll be during the budget process.
So the only thing coming back at this time is the 5G. Sorry, I was drawing a blank.
It's not going to come back to budget or finance first? Or is it your information to us? I don't care how it's done.
No, what will happen is we'll go to the finance committee. We'll discuss the budget, and as part of a budget solution, if needed, then we'll continue to talk about it. But like I said, it was. I still think it's premature. We need to discuss it. Need to use it as an option if we need to. But we still have the preliminary information out there. We're still gathering.
That's what we thought.
Right. So we'll come back to the finance committee with how we're doing on the budget next month, and then we'll do the budget workshop. I believe it's the end of this month.
May 27th.
May 27th.
The finance committee meeting's normally the third Monday. Are you guys reviewing the sales tax data there, and then at the third Wednesday meeting, we'll be able to get an idea of where we're at?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we should be able to know somewhere we're at. I mean, there's a lot of moving parts. A lot of it has to do is when we open up as a community. You know, when our non-essential businesses open, when travel begins on the base again, because that's, significant for our community.
So they've started some work on base. Has the hotels, do you know from RACVB, have they seen an increase at all from some of the workers on base?
There hasn't been a necessary increase, but they have seen a steady amount, so it hasn't dropped under a certain occupancy.
Okay.
But it has been at a very low occupancy comparatively.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, mayor and council comments. Anybody? Okay, then we will adjourn. Thank you all.
I would like to point out to Sheree.